Chapter 41:17. Ji Tianqing had a premonition that the imperial tutor was up to something. However, he could not predict the future, nor could he guess the imperial tutor's plan out of thin air. Therefore, other than reminding the few forces under his command to be careful, he could not make any other arrangements. He was not too worried about the northern army that he was leading. As long as he was not separated from the Phoenix clan, Wuxia clan, and 100 Refinement's ancient sect, these three forces were very safe. Jin Shuang, Qi Yan, and Meng Shuai were all killed by him. His invincible strength was known to the world. As long as the imperial tutor was not crazy, he would not send people to attack his northern army. Therefore, he was most worried about the southern army. Although the southern army was made up of 6 forces, there were more than 6,000 people in total. It seemed that this army was strong and had many powerful people. They were not to be trifled with. However, that was relative. To the domain lords of the various regions, it was naturally a force that they could not contend against. However, to the imperial tutor, it was obviously a pushover. After all, the soldiers that the imperial tutor gathered were in the tens of thousands. Considering this point, Ji Tianqing sent 3 messages to Nangong Buhua within 5 days, reminding him to be careful and not to be arrogant. He did not know if it was a reminder from the heavens or a premonition. Ji Tianqing had a trace of uneasiness in his heart, and it was getting more and more serious. This was the premonition of a powerful person. Although he could not really predict the future and deduce the secrets of the heavens. However, he could sense and be alert, and he could tell that the uneasiness was related to the southern army. After sending 3 messages, Ji Tianqing did not mention this matter again. He led the Phoenix clan, Wuxia clan, and 100 Refinement's ancient sect to the north of Yenshu Grotto Heaven, conquering various regions along the way. With him personally holding the fort, those territorial lords who did not escape to the Dark Night region were very sensible. As soon as he appeared, they immediately bowed their heads and obediently recited the oath of surrender. After surrendering, those domain lords had to intentionally show their loyalty, or try to curry favor in front of Ji Tianqing by volunteering to carry out some missions. However, as usual, Ji Tianqing did not assign them any tasks. He only asked them to maintain the stability of the region and restore the freedom of the people as soon as possible. If there were any orders or missions, he would send out orders to inform these domain masters. Just like that, 7 days passed by peacefully. Ji Tianqing led the northern army and conquered 7 regions in a row. In order to speed up their journey, he simply asked the 3 forces to retrieve their respective divine ships. More than 3,000 soldiers were gathered in his god-slaying battleship. Everyone traveled together, and their speed more than doubled. In any case, it was a supreme-grade king-grade divine warship. Its interior was extremely spacious, and it could be changed at will. It was more than enough to accommodate more than 3,000 people. The 3 factions expressed their compliance and gladly accepted this. It was good that they could increase their speed and increase their safety. After all, it was Kenshin's flagship. It would definitely be of a higher grade and safer than their own warships. However, when Ji Tianqing led the 3 forces to conquer another region, they were shocked. On this night, the god-slaying battleship sped through the night sky, rushing to the next region. The Shami Grotto Heaven's intelligence network had already investigated clearly. The next region's domain lord had not escaped. He was still sitting in his cave abode, waiting for his death. Or rather, waiting for Kenshin to conquer him. At this moment, Ji Tianqing's uneasiness suddenly became more and more intense. It had already begun to affect his state of mind, making it impossible for him to remain calm. At first, he thought that he had been too worried recently, causing him to feel uneasy. However, even after circulating his energy for an hour, he was still unable to suppress his anxiety and uneasiness. Thus, he realized that something must have happened to the southern army. Such a strong sense of uneasiness meant that the situation was very serious. He pondered for a moment, then summoned the Divine Phoenix clan leader, Wuxia clan leader, and Su Balian to urgently discuss this matter. After the three leaders received the summons, they quickly came to Ji Tianqing's secret room. Lord Alliance Leader, what happened? Lord Alliance Leader summoned us in the middle of the night. Did something big happen? No matter what you are worried about, Lord Alliance Leader, please tell us. We are willing to share your worries. Ever since the Rebel Alliance was established, they had always been victorious. They had never tasted defeat. Now, the entire boundless heaven continent was spreading the Rebel Alliance's name, praising Kenshin. Even their factions were treated as saviors and heroes by the billions of people. The three factions did not pay any casualties, but they received so much praise and support from the people. Of course, they were overjoyed. Perhaps when they first joined the Rebel Alliance, they were still a little uneasy and uncertain about the future. However, now, they were 100 times more confident and approved of the Rebel Alliance. In fact, they even wanted to have a real battle to show off their martial prowess and make meritorious contributions. Ji Tianqing waved his hand, indicating that the three leaders did not need to be so excited. He said calmly, in the past few days, I had a sudden impulse to use a secret technique to deduce the heavenly cycle and predict good and bad luck. As expected, the Southern Army is afraid of a disaster and may not be able to survive this. Therefore, I will personally make a trip to the south. The three factions will each take a warship and rush to the next area. Just act according to the original plan. That zone leader has long had the intention to surrender. He is just waiting for us to arrive and go through the motions. Therefore, you will not encounter any danger on this trip. If things change, you must not fight head-on. Remember to conserve your strength and report to me first. Hearing him say this, the three leaders understood what was going on. At the same time, they were also worried about the Southern Army. Lord Alliance Leader, please rest assured. We will definitely act according to your orders. Lord Alliance Leader, please pay attention to your safety and be careful. Lord Alliance Leader, you are our spiritual leader and the spiritual pillar of the entire boundless heaven continent. Nothing must happen to you. The three leaders also reminded Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing did not say anything else. He put away the God-Slayer worship on the spot and parted ways with the three factions. More than 3,000 soldiers appeared in the night sky. The three leaders hurriedly took out the warship and ordered their disciples to board it. Bai Long steered the God-Slayer warship and flew south with Ji Tianqing. After flying for 100,000 miles, Ji Tianqing glanced at Bai Long. Seeing that he had only used 80% of the God-Slayer warship's power, he said, no need to conserve your strength. Full speed ahead. Full speed ahead meant giving it their all. Every hour, they would use up billions of resources. In a day, they would use up close to 100 billion resources. Bai Long was stunned. He looked at Ji Tianqing with some surprise and asked, Master, is there a need for this? Could it be that the Southern Army has really encountered a disaster? Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said, I rarely have such premonitions. Since it has appeared, it must be true. To be safe, we should hurry over and meet up with the Southern Army. Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 41:18. Seeing Ji Tianqing's solemn tone, White Dragon frowned. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, White Dragon stopped hesitating and activated the acceleration array of the deity-slaying battleship. Whoosh! The divine array of the deity-slaying battleship unleashed 120% of its power, increasing the speed of the battleship by 50%. Instantly, the battleship streaked across the sky like a shooting star and headed south. In order to meet up with Nangong Buhua and the others as soon as possible, the deity-slaying battleship had no time to hide its tracks. Ji Tianqing didn't cultivate in the Jiutian 10 Absolutes Tower either. Instead, he stared at White Dragon in the cockpit. Of course, he sent a message to Nangong Buhua first. Then, he closed his eyes to rest and waited patiently. In the message, he didn't mention that he was heading south. He only reminded Nangong Buhua to be careful and that there might be danger in the next 2 days. Soon, Nangong Buhua sent a message saying that he was leading the Southern Army to the Billowing Waves region to subdue the Billowing Waves region master. If nothing unexpected happened, the Southern Army would arrive at the Domain Master's cave residence in 12 hours, around noon the next day. Shimi Grotto Heaven's intelligence network had found out that the Billowing Waves region master had always been a neutral party. Even when the Imperial Tutor ordered the Billowing Waves region master to gather at the Dark Night region 3 times, the Billowing Waves region master remained unmoved. It seemed that the Billowing Waves region master was determined to surrender. There wouldn't be any accidents. After Ji Tianqing received Nangong Buhua's reply, he didn't say anything else. As he closed his eyes to rest, he thought to himself, if I were the Imperial Tutor, I wouldn't just sit around and wait for death. I have gathered so many elite soldiers and immortal kings. I have to give them a mission to deal a heavy blow to the rebel alliance. Only then can I turn the situation around. With me leading the Northern Army, it's useless for the Imperial Tutor to send anyone. Even if he comes personally, he'll just be digging his own grave. Therefore, the Imperial Tutor is likely to send a very powerful team to the south of the continent secretly to intercept the Southern Army. If he can successfully destroy the Southern Army, he'll be able to destroy the 6 forces of the Rebel Alliance and deal a heavy blow to the Rebel Alliance. At the same time, the Imperial Tutor can redeem his reputation and intimidate the other region masters. Ji Tianqing had made this judgment based on the uneasiness in his heart and the warning signs that had appeared in his mind. He was immersed in his deduction and continued to simulate the thoughts of the Imperial Preceptor. Since they've sent out a team of experts to secretly rush to the south of the continent, their target is the Southern Army. Then, they must keep it a secret. Only then will they be able to succeed in one strike, the Southern Army's armies. Unless the Imperial Preceptor has my deduction and calculation ability, it is impossible to intercept and kill the Southern Army on the way. At this point, Ji Tianqing's eyes lit up as an idea flashed through his mind. Could it be the Rippling Waves domain? The Southern Army's current route and goal were very obvious. They were heading for the Billowing domain. With the Imperial Tutor's intelligence network, he would definitely be able to find out about this. Therefore, the Imperial Tutor sending that team of experts to ambush the Southern Army in the Billowing domain was definitely the safest choice. However, on second thought, Ji Tianqing felt that something was amiss. But the Billowing domain's ruler isn't loyal to the Azura God Emperor. He's also a person who values his own interests and has no backbone or dignity. He's already expressed his willingness to surrender. How can he cooperate with the Imperial Tutor to ambush the Southern Army? Ji Tianqing's first reaction was that the team of experts couldn't possibly be ambushing the Southern Army in the Billowing domain. But he thought about it again. The more impossible something was, the more careless one would be. Take Nangong Buhua for example. No matter how Ji Tianqing reminded him, he wouldn't take it seriously. At least, Nangong Buhua didn't think that there would be any danger in the Billowing domain. The Billowing domain's ruler is a fence-sitter. If our alliance finds him first, he'll probably surrender. But he didn't openly betray the Imperial Tutor. If the Imperial Tutor's team finds him, he probably won't resist, right? With this thought, Ji Tianqing vaguely guessed the Imperial Tutor's plan and the location of the Southern Army's calamity. Therefore, he took out a communication jade slip and prepared to remind Nangong Buhua to be careful of the Billowing domain. But after he took out the jade slip, he retracted his hand. After all, he had already sent 4 messages to Nangong Buhua. The contents were roughly the same. They were all reminding Nangong Buhua to be careful and not be careless. If he sent another message, wouldn't Nangong Buhua be annoyed? Would it make him seem too cautious and lose the demeanor of an expert? Most importantly, all of this was just his conjecture and imagination. He didn't have any evidence. If he rashly sent a message to Nangong Buhua, but everything was normal in the billowing domain and nothing happened as he predicted, it would be a huge blow to him. That would definitely be a huge blow to him and affect his prestige. Thinking of this, Ji Tianqing put away the communication jade slip and decided to wait and see. Of course, White Dragon would still drive the god-slaying battleship to the billowing domain as quickly as possible. At the same time, late at night, in the residence of the billowing domain's ruler, the mystic realm with a radius of hundreds of thousands of miles was filled with abundant divine power and beautiful scenery. In the center of the mystic realm, there were hundreds of mansions and palaces on a majestic mountain range. Nearly 10,000 elite soldiers lived there. At this moment, thousands of elite masters were hiding in the majestic mountain range under the night sky. These monarch god masters were very skilled in concealment. They merged with the earth and mountains and were almost undetectable. The many palaces in the domain chief's manor were lit as usual. It was as peaceful as usual. However, in the residence of the billowing domain's ruler, a solemn and serious scene was playing out. The billowing domain's ruler and more than 10 god generals were standing in the brightly lit main hall with their hands clasped behind their backs and their heads lowered respectfully. Dozens of god kings stood under the walls and in the corners of the main hall. All of them were full of murderous intent and were glaring at the ruler. 2 white-haired old men in luxurious robes stood before the throne at the head of the table. 8 god kings stood beside them as well. The 2 old men in luxurious robes had the most powerful aura and the most dignified postures. After all, they were not only god kings in the 9th firmament realm, but also the great guardian and second guardian who had guarded the Azura divine palace for many years. What was the billowing domain's ruler in front of these experts? Of course, she had to stand obediently and respectfully and wait for her punishment. At this moment, the great guardian reprimanded her with a cold face. Billowing domain's ruler, you have failed to live up to the God Emperor's trust and title. Your performance this time has greatly disappointed the imperial tutor. In view of your disloyalty, the imperial tutor will take note of you temporarily and hope that you can redeem yourself by meritorious service. Otherwise, I'm here tonight to put you on trial in front of everyone. The second guardian said expressionlessly, I can't trust you for the time being. Therefore, for the sake of our grand plan, you and your generals can only stay in the prison for a few days. Chapter 41:19. Without a doubt. The God Slayer secretly sent by the imperial tutor had arrived at the Wavy Wave domain and taken control of the domain chief's mansion. The God Slayer didn't have much hope for the Wavy Wave domain chief, who was a fence-sitter. After sneaking into the domain chief's mansion, the God Slayer took control of the entire secret realm by force. He didn't let anyone in or out and imprisoned all the soldiers in case anyone leaked the information. Then, the 2 guardians led a group of god kings to seal off the residence of the Wavy Wave domain chief. Following that, the aforementioned situation and conversation took place. The God Slayer treated the Wavy Wave domain chief like an enemy, which was really chilling. However, the 2 guardians and the Wavy Wave domain chief both knew that no one would show mercy at such a critical moment. Protecting their own interests was the most important thing. Therefore, the Wavy Wave domain chief didn't fight back on the spot, nor did he try to send a message to warn the rebel alliance. Anyway, his attitude had been wavering. He could accept being loyal to the Azura God Emperor or the rebel alliance. As for the result, it depended on which force entered the domain chief's mansion first and took control of him first. I will obey the orders of the 2 protectors. Hearing the second protector's order, the Wavy Wave region master bowed indifferently and said, Protectors, please understand. This subordinate has always been His Majesty the God Emperor and has never changed. Of course, I know it's too late to say anything now. So, let me prove it with my actions. The Wavy Wave domain chief had made a decision in the short time just now. He would continue to be loyal to the Azura God Emperor. Even if the two guardians and the imperial tutor still doubted him, he could redeem himself by stopping the rebel alliance and proving his innocence. Unfortunately, the two guardians didn't intend to give him the chance. Now you want to redeem yourself by doing good deeds? Proving your innocence? The great guardian raised his eyebrows and squinted at the wavy wave domain chief with a disdainful sneer. That won't be necessary. You'd better go to the prison and reflect on yourself. With that, the great protector waved his sleeve and ordered, "Take him away." Immediately, several armored godly kings escorted the domain master, vice domain master, and a dozen divine generals out of the hall. Next, they would be suppressed in a heavily guarded prison until the God Slayer destroyed the rebel alliance's southern army. Only then would they be released. The hall was silent for a moment. Before long, one of the god kings responsible for escorting the region lord and the others returned to the hall. He reported to the two protectors, the region lord and the others have been imprisoned, and the sealing formation has been activated. The great guardian nodded slightly and warned in a solemn tone, "Stay alert and watch over them strictly. Don't let them escape. Most importantly, we have to keep an eye on them day and night. We can't let them spread the news." Everyone knew that the domain master of the Wavy Sea domain wanted to rebel. If at this moment, the domain master of the Billowing Wave domain tried to send out a message to alert the rebel alliance's southern army, this would be his proof of allegiance. He could take credit for saving the southern army and join the rebel alliance. However, the God Slayer's hard work and the imperial tutor's meticulous plan would all go to waste. The God King bowed and acknowledged the order. Then, he left the hall to carry out his mission. The hall was quiet again. The great protector looked at the divine generals and asked, "How's the ambush formation that I asked you to set up?" The leader of the divine generals hurriedly replied, "Great protector, the soldiers have already completed their mission. They hid very well. I've checked twice and found no problems." The great protector nodded and said to the second protector, "I'm afraid that the ambush formation is not enough. We have to take action as well. While the southern army of the rebel alliance hasn't arrived yet, let's try to set up 2 more formations in half a day." The second protector thought for a moment and nodded in agreement. "If we use 36 god kings to help us set up the formations, it shouldn't be difficult to complete." After the discussion, everyone started to move. Half a day passed quickly. At noon the next day, several divine warships flew across the sky in a formation and approached the palace of the Surge domain rapidly. Obviously, the southern army of the rebel alliance had arrived on time. The entrance to the secret realm was already in sight. In the divine warships of the 6 forces, the disciples of each clan finished their rest and started to prepare for battle. The clan leaders and elders of each clan also gathered in the hall of the divine warship. They were ready to give orders at any time. The divine warship in the lead was the Nangong clan's warship. More than 1,000 disciples of the Nangong clan were ready to set off. They were in high spirits. Nangong Buhua, Nangong Nihuang, and several elders stood in the hall and looked at the entrance of the secret realm with their divine senses. The Alliance Master has already reminded us 3 times to be careful. We have been very cautious and didn't encounter any accidents along the way. Now, we have arrived on time. The Surge Domain Master, that fence-sitter, has already shown signs of surrendering. I think that when we arrive at the entrance of the secret realm, there won't even be a battle. They will let us through directly. At that time, he won't even have the courage to negotiate. He will just swear the oath of surrender. Nangong Buhua looked ahead and said with a smile. The elders nodded in agreement. They all laughed and talked, making fun of the Surge Domain Master. Only Nangong Nihuang remained calm. She reminded her father appropriately, "Father, since young Master Long has warned us 3 times to be careful, something must have happened. He has divine powers that we can't imagine. He must have sensed something. That's why he is so serious. Even if we arrive at the Surge Domain Master's mansion, we can't let our guard down. Nangong Buhua nodded seriously and said, Ni Huang is right. Young Master Long is not an alarmist. He must have his reasons for being so cautious. After pausing for a moment, he thought of an idea and said to Nangong Ni Huang, send a message to the other 5 clans. Tell them to stay alert. We, the Nangong clan, will go to the entrance of the secret realm and enter the Surge Domain Master's mansion to check out the situation. Let them follow behind us. They can come in after I make sure it is safe. Normally, a leader would let the other clans under him test the enemy's situation. They would be cannon fodder and die. However, as the deputy leader of the rebel alliance, Nangong Buhua knew that there were a few clans who were not convinced. He didn't want to let Ji Tianqing down, so he worked even harder. Not only did he take the lead in carrying out the mission, but he was also the first to go when there was danger. He helped the other clans to scout the way and bring up the rear. He did this because he didn't want to give others a reason to criticize him. He wanted the other clans to be convinced that the Nangong clan had sacrificed the most. He deserved the position of deputy leader. Chapter 41:20. Nangong Ni Huang and the other elders saw how selfless Nangong Buhua was. Everyone had complicated expressions. They wanted to persuade Nangong Buhua that there was no need to do this. But they could not say it out loud. They knew what Nangong Buhua was thinking. Nangong Ni Huang still followed the order and sent a message to the other 5 families. However, the leaders of the 5 families had different thoughts when they received the message. They told the elders of Nangong Buhua's order, and everyone started to discuss it. We arrived at the entrance of the mystic realm together. Of course, we have to go in together to find the wavy zone ruler. What is Nangong Buhua doing? He made it sound nice. He said that he was afraid of danger and wanted to check out the situation first. It seems that he would rather sacrifice the Nangong clan to protect us. Ha! But who knows what he is really thinking? The wavy zone ruler has already shown her intention to surrender. She is a fence-sitter. What danger can there be? The way I see it, he's probably trying to steal the credit. That's right. All along, the 6 families have been successful when working together. However, merits that were too hard to obtain were not considered merits. Nangong Buhua is too weak to be a deputy leader. Of course, he wants to gain credit as soon as possible. Humph. What does the leader see in Nangong Buhua? When the leader returned to the boundless heaven continent, he would definitely be stronger than the Nangong clan if he went to our Lan family. Sigh. Nangong Buhua is so lucky to become the deputy leader. In terms of status, experience, and strength, how can he be compared to our war god clan? We respect the Kenshin, but that doesn't mean we have to lower our heads to the Nangong clan. Don't listen to Nangong Buhua. He wants to take credit for himself. Let's not let him succeed. Nangong Buhua doesn't live up to his title as the deputy leader. He knows it himself. That's why he wants to gain more credit so that he can have a clear conscience. But we can't let him have his way. Even though the 5 families had split up and each took a divine ship. They all had the same reaction when they received the news. All the clans thought highly of themselves and felt that the Nangong clan was not as strong as them. Nangong Buhua was not fit to be the vice alliance master. Even if Nangong Buhua wanted the Nangong clan to be cannon fodder, they didn't appreciate it and even thought that Nangong Buhua wanted to steal the credit. Thus, an awkward scene appeared. As they approached the entrance of the secret realm, the battleship of the Nangong clan took the lead and headed straight for the entrance. According to the plan, the warships of the other 5 families should slow down and stay 10,000 miles away to observe the situation. After the Nangong clan entered the grotto heaven and ascertained that it was safe, the battleships of the 5 clans would follow. But now, the battleships of the 5 families showed no signs of slowing down. They continued to follow the battleships of the Nangong clan and rushed towards the entrance of the secret realm. At the sight of this, Nangong Buhua frowned and his face darkened. However, he did not get angry. Instead, a look of self-mockery flashed across his eyes. Ha! It seems that this seat has been thinking too much. Looks like their prejudice towards this seat is not something that can be dispelled overnight. Nangong Nihuang and the elders all looked angry and couldn't help but discuss. Those 5 families actually disobeyed the order. Do they still have any respect for the deputy alliance leader? Don't talk about it. They have always been unhappy that our clan leader has become the deputy alliance leader. Damn it! Even if they have prejudice against our clan leader, they can't treat a military order as a joke. That's right. If something happens and the alliance leader pursues the matter, can they bear the responsibility? The elders were filled with righteous indignation and couldn't wait to reprimand the 5 families. Nangong Nihuang also frowned and said indifferently, "Stop discussing and focus on preparing for the battle. Report this matter to the alliance leader after the battle and he will naturally deal with it. What we need to do is to do our best to complete the mission. We can't disappoint the alliance leader and can't embarrass him." The elders quickly nodded in agreement and stopped discussing this matter. They suppressed their anger and remained calm as they began to mobilize the disciples of the Nangong clan. Swoosh! The battleship of the Nangong clan arrived at the entrance of the secret realm and quickly stopped. The cabin door opened and Nangong Buhua rushed out first. Nangong Nihuang and the 5 elders led 1,200 disciples and rushed out of the battleship in a mighty manner. Swoosh! In a short while, the Nangong clan had surrounded the cloud platform at the entrance of the secret realm. There were more than 100 elite guards on the cloud platform floating in the sea of clouds. They were guarding the array altar that led in and out of the secret realm. They were also vigilant and alert. When they saw the battleship attacking, they had already sent a message to the people in the secret realm. When the disciples of the Nangong clan surrounded the cloud platform, the 100 guards quickly waved their divine weapons and launched an attack fearlessly. Suddenly, an overwhelming divine light shrouded the sky and covered the scorching noon sun. Seeing this scene, the people of the Nangong clan were stunned and somewhat incredulous. What's the situation with the guards of the Billowing Waves Domain Chief's mansion? More than 100 guards surrounded by thousands of our troops have the courage to take the initiative to attack. They are courting death. The situation doesn't look good. Didn't they say that the Billowing Waves Domain Chief had the intention to surrender? I didn't see that at all. Although these thoughts flashed through their minds, their hands were not idle. They immediately launched a counterattack. Kill them. Those who stand in the way of our army shall be killed without mercy. Nangong Buhua and Nangong Nihuang gave the order decisively. Swoosh! 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 Instantly, more than 1,000 disciples of the Nangong clan, who were ready to attack, unleashed violent divine power and unleashed destructive divine skills. The divine skills that covered the sky and the sun, as well as various kinds of wind, fire, and lightning, poured down like a torrential flood and drowned the 100 guards. Boom! 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 The divine skills of the two sides collided with deafening loud noises that spread over a radius of tens of thousands of miles. The divine spell attacks of the guards were directly blocked and shattered. They had no lethality to speak of. However, a round of attacks from the disciples of the Nangong clan defeated the 100 guards and killed or injured many of them. The guards were instantly defeated. More than 100 of them were killed on the spot. Not even their corpses were left. More than 50 people who were lucky enough to survive were also severely injured. They were dripping with blood and struggling at death's door. At this moment, the 5 families also sent out a large number of disciples to join the battle. The dozens of guards who were lucky enough to survive turned around and retreated without hesitation when they saw that the situation was not good. Since they were going to escape back to the Mystery Realm, they had to activate the array altar and open the entrance to the Mystery Realm. After they passed through the oval-shaped light door and escaped back to the Mystery Realm, it was too late to deactivate the array. Nangong Buhua, Nangong Nihuang, and the others chased after them. They killed several guards who deactivated the array and led the way into the Mystery Realm. Chapter 41-21. When the Nangong clan rushed into the secret land, the entrance to the secret land had been breached. Nangong Buhua and Nangong Nihuang led the Nangong clan disciples to chase after the 50 fleeing guards. The 5 clans followed them and entered the secret land in a single file. After they entered the secret land, several battleships followed them in. More than 6,000 Nangong clan disciples rushed to the center of the secret land and headed straight for the master of the wavy zone. 6 battleships followed them closely, escorting them on both sides and monitoring the surroundings. Of course, the 5 clans only wanted to rush forward and not let the Nangong clan take the lead. Nangong Buhua, who was at the front, was thinking about something else. This is too strange. The master of the wavy zone has been thinking about surrendering for a long time. Since he hasn't run away, he must surrender when we arrive. Even a fool knows that he can't resist because that's suicide. He doesn't even need to sacrifice the 100 guards at the entrance of the secret land. Even if he wants to put on a show, he doesn't need to sacrifice the lives of 100 guards. Is young Master Long right? Has the situation changed? At the thought of this, Nangong Buhua felt a sense of danger and slowed down his speed. He focused more of his attention on monitoring the movements around him. He thought that if the master of the wavy zone wanted to play some tricks, he would probably set up traps and ambushes. As long as he was careful and didn't fall into his trap, he could gain the upper hand and take the initiative. However, the Nangong clan followed Nangong Buhua's order and slowed down. However, the 5,000 Nangong clan disciples didn't slow down at all. Instead, they took the opportunity to speed up and chase after the 50 fleeing guards. We have more than 5,000 people. Can't we deal with those 50 injured guards? If those guards escape back to the master's mansion, we'll lose face. What does the master of the wavy zone want to do? If he wants to surrender, he should surrender. How can he let the guards resist? In that case, let's teach him a lesson. We must kill those 50 guards to intimidate the master of the wavy zone. The 5 clans all had the same idea. In fact, they did succeed. The 50 heavily injured guards weren't able to escape fast enough. It didn't take long for the 5 families to catch up. There were more than 200 of the clan disciples at the front. Each of them used a divine ability and killed the 50 or so guards. Moreover, their deaths were extremely miserable. They died without an intact corpse, their bodies smashed to pieces. After killing more than 50 guards, the 5 clans could finally hold their heads high and regain their valiant aura. They did not slow down. Instead, they charged toward the domain chief's manor in an extremely confident and domineering manner. When Nangong Buhua saw their posture, he hurriedly shouted to remind everyone to slow down and be careful of the enemy's ambush. But how could the people of the 5 clans listen? Many of the patriarchs and elders revealed playful smiles. The disciples of the various clans all laughed out loud, and some even opened their mouths to mock and ridicule. Ha ha ha, there are over 10,000 people in the domain chief's mansion, but only about 1,000 divine emperors with fighting capabilities. Even if they wanted to resist and set up an ambush, what's the point? The alliance of our 6 clans is made up of elite soldiers. Why should we be afraid of a mere domain lord? What's wrong with Nangong family head? Why did he become so timid and overcautious? Could it be that he failed to take the credit, so he's thinking of other ways? Ha ha ha. That's very likely. Sigh. Nangong family head, don't bother. Even if the Nangong family doesn't show up, we can easily deal with the domain chief by watching from the sidelines. Many bold disciples of the clans even started to mock Nangong Buhua. When the people of the Nangong family heard these words, they were all angry. Many hot-blooded men were so angry that their lungs were about to explode. They glared at the disciples of the various clans. However, Nangong Nihuang had already given a strict order that no internal strife was allowed. Otherwise, they would be punished according to the most severe clan rules. Therefore, the people of the Nangong family could only endure for the time being. Nangong Buhua was angry and helpless when he saw that the 5 clans didn't obey his order or listen to his advice. However, he didn't have any good ideas at the moment, and he couldn't change the prejudice of the 5 clans against him in the short term. For the time being, he could only take the overall situation into consideration and endure this humiliation. At the same time, he prayed silently in his heart that he was just being paranoid and that there wouldn't be any accidents. Otherwise, if the Southern Army suffered heavy losses, he, as the leader and deputy leader of the army, would have to bear the blame. After all, Kenshin trusted him so much that he gave him full authority over the Nangong family's army. Unknowingly, 15 minutes had passed. More than 6,000 people of the Southern Army arrived at the domain chief's mansion under the cover of 6 battleships. Along the way, the people of the various clans released their divine senses and used their ultimate skills to repeatedly check the situation in the secret land. Even Nangong Buhua was very cautious about the surroundings. However, there were no accidents along the way, and the army wasn't ambushed. In front of them was a lofty mountain range, and palaces and mansions were built on the peaks of each mountain. It was a splendid sight. The armies and battleships of the 5 clans pressed forward majestically. They were very confident and domineering. They landed above the domain chief's mansion and looked down at the entire mansion from above. When they saw that the palaces and mansions below them were in chaos, a loud ear-piercing sound rang out. An ear-piercing alarm sounded, and a powerful bugle horn sounded. More than 1,000 guards ran in a panic. Seeing this, the crowd was not nervous or worried at all. Instead, they smiled contemptuously. Soon after, more than 1,000 guards gathered in the square and flew into the sky to confront the Southern Army. Then, the crowd realized that the situation was not good. Lan Wuji, the War God clan leader, and the Xia clan leader all frowned and shouted at the guard commanders, "Are you the only guards in the entire domain chief's mansion? Where is the domain chief of the Billow domain? Where is your deputy? The Southern Army of the Rebel Alliance is here. Ask the domain chief of the Billow domain to come out and talk. The domain chief of the Billow domain only sent these small fries to deal with us. She has underestimated us. Domain chief of the Billow domain, I'll give you 3 breaths to show yourself. Otherwise, don't blame us for being rude." The patriarchs all had aggressive auras as they questioned the other party in a domineering manner. Cave Master Shimi even used his divine power to shout out loud to force the domain chief of the Billow domain to show herself. Nangong Buhua didn't say anything, but his face was solemn, and the uneasiness in his heart grew stronger. At this moment, 2 white-haired elders flew out of the domain chief's mansion, followed by 18 god kings. They came to the sky and looked at the disciples of the 6 clans with cold smiles. The domain chief of the Billow domain is reflecting on her mistakes in the prison. Clan leaders, I've been waiting for you for a long time. The Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 41-22. The sudden appearance of the 2 white-haired old men and the 18 god kings stunned the people of the 6 clans. Especially the words of the 2 elders, everyone's expression changed drastically. They knew that something was wrong. Oh no, we seem to have fallen into a trap. Be more confident. Don't say, seem. Damn it. No wonder I felt that something was wrong. I didn't expect the Wavy Zone Master to be so bold as to set up a trap. From what the white-haired old man said, they have imprisoned the Wavy Zone Master. This means that the ambush was not set up by the Wavy Zone Master. It was done by the two old men. I understand now. The two old men were sent by the Imperial Tutor. I see. They knew that the Wavy Zone Master intended to surrender, so they captured her. If there were only 20 godly kings, there would be nothing to worry about. I'm afraid that they have already set up a trap in all directions. Oh no, we shouldn't have rushed into their ambush in such a hurry. The patriarchs, elders, and disciples of the 5 families were whispering to each other, their expressions solemn. Of course, their discussions and predictions were immediately verified. As their voices fell, the towering mountains and precipitous ridges in all directions immediately lit up with divine light that blotted out the sky and covered the earth. Swoosh! 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 The divine light shot up and gathered in the sky, forming a huge light shield with a radius of 20,000 miles. It was like an inverted bowl that sealed off an area with a radius of 20,000 miles, trapping the disciples and the battleships of the 6 families. Then, thousands of godly emperors in armor flew into the sky with swords in their hands and got into an offensive formation. 30 godly kings were scattered in all directions, occupying the core position of the offensive formation. They commanded more than 3,000 godly emperors. In an instant, all the God Slayer moved out and exposed the trap like a ferocious beast bearing its sharp fangs. A formless killing intent immediately filled the air, causing the atmosphere to become extremely solemn and austere. The people of the 5 families looked embarrassed. While they were worried, they regretted not listening to Nangong Buhua's advice. After all, before entering the Mystery Land, Nangong Buhua had warned everyone that there was danger and asked the Nangong clan to enter the Mystery Land first to investigate the situation. Even after entering the secret realm, Nangong Buhua reminded everyone again. However, the people of the 5 clans didn't listen to his advice. Only then did they enter the ambush. Everyone could not help but think that if they had listened to Nangong Buhua's advice, things would not have turned out this way. At the very least, as long as the Nangong clan was ambushed, they would not fall into a desperate situation. Thinking of this, the people of the 5 clans were somewhat regretful and annoyed. Many people subconsciously turned their heads to see the reaction of Nangong Buhua and the others. When they turned their heads to look behind them, they discovered that the Nangong clan had already retreated 20,000 miles away and were outside the ceiling formation. It turned out that Nangong Buhua had long predicted that the situation was not good. There might be changes in the domain chief's mansion. When the 2 white-haired old men and the 18 god kings appeared, he gave the order to retreat decisively to prevent an ambush. As it turned out, he had succeeded. When the formation was activated, the 1,000-plus people of the Nangong clan all retreated outside the formation. Seeing this, the expressions of the people of the 5 clans became more and more interesting. All kinds of thoughts flashed through many people's minds. Nangong Buhua is cunning. He sensed danger and retreated in advance. We are all trapped in the formation, but the Nangong clan is fine. Alas! If we knew this would happen, we should have listened to him and stayed at the back to be vigilant. If we had followed Nangong Buhua's plan, we would have stayed at the back and let the Nangong clan scout the situation first. Now, it should have been the other way around. Alas! No matter what, as the Deputy Alliance leader, he can't absolve himself from the blame for not making the correct decision in advance. That, he reminded us twice. We just didn't listen to his orders. Shut up. He is the Deputy Alliance leader. If we are severely injured, won't he be responsible for it? Most of the disciples of the 5 clans regretted not listening to Nangong Buhua's orders. However, there were still a few people who refused to admit their mistakes and wanted to shift the blame to Nangong Buhua. There were many people in any time and place who did not reflect on themselves and were used to shifting the blame. The two white-haired elders opened their mouths again. Looking down at the 5,000 people in the formation, they sneered and said, "During this period of time, you traitors have had a smooth journey, and you've been flaunting your prowess. The Imperial Tutor hasn't made a move yet. Do you think that the Imperial Tutor is afraid of you? Ha ha ha. How ignorant and ridiculous. The reason why the Imperial Tutor hasn't made a move yet is because he has planned this shocking plan to catch all of you in one fell swoop. Today is the day all of you rebels die. I am benevolent and can't bear to see you die so carelessly. Therefore, I will let you know our identities. I am the first guardian who guards the Azura Divine Palace all year round. This is the second guardian. We have guarded the Divine Palace for thousands of years and have never shown our faces. Therefore, the world doesn't know about us. However, everyone in the Azura Divine Palace knows that we are the head guardians of the Divine Palace." After introducing himself, the first guardian pointed to the 5,000 soldiers around him and said, "These 5,000 people are the elite soldiers under the God Emperor. The Imperial Tutor selected us to form the God Slayer. We are on a secret mission to kill all of you. Of course, the God Slayer is only 10% of the Imperial Tutor's soldiers. It's obvious how tiny and laughable all of you rebels are when compared to us." The second guardian continued, "Don't make any unnecessary struggles and resistance. Give up all your fantasies and accept your death obediently. After killing all of you, we still have to kill the Kenshin and the three forces he leads. We'll let the people of the boundless heaven continent see how weak you all, this bunch of renegades, are." After saying this, the second guardian waved his hand and gave the order to attack. The 30 God King powerhouses scattered around immediately revolved their cultivation and activated the sealing array. They released a powerful force to suppress the 5 clans juniors. The over 3,000 soldiers also brandished their divine weapons and unleashed all kinds of divine abilities to besiege the people of the 5 clans. Suddenly, the pressure on the 5 clans juniors greatly increased. It was difficult for them to move and their combat strength was greatly weakened. Divine light and shadows blotted out the sky and covered the earth. They carried with them the power to destroy heaven and earth, pouring down from the sky. The 5,000 clans juniors had no way out. They could only let out angry roars and erupt with their strongest strength. They joined forces to form a battle formation to resist the enemy's attack. Chapter 41-23. Although both sides had the same number of people and experts. However, the God Slayer was waiting for an opportunity to strike. Over 5,000 disciples were ambushed and their powers were suppressed by the array. One side had the initiative, while the other was in a passive position. The result was self-evident. Both sides had only exchanged one round of blows, but the God Slayer was obviously at an advantage. There were no casualties. As for the 5,000 disciples, they did not have any chemistry or cooperation with each other, so they could not completely block the other side's attack. Over 100 disciples were injured. There were also over 50 weaker and unlucky disciples who were killed on the spot. This result made the God Slayer even more pleased. The disciples were furious, but there was nothing they could do. On the other side, the Great Guardian and the 18 God Kings did not participate in this battle. Their target was the Nangong clan that was outside the sealing formation. They did not care about the 5,000 disciples who were sealed by the array. In their eyes, the 5,000 disciples were like turtles in a jar and would definitely die. The only uncertainties were the disciples of the Nangong clan who had been alerted in advance and hadn't been sealed by the formation. The God Slayer had spent a lot of time and effort to design this trap and ambush. His goal was to wipe out the entire southern army in one fell swoop. Since he wanted to wipe them all out, he could not let any of them escape. Swish! Swish! The Great Protector led 18 God King powerhouses and 1,000 Divine Lord powerhouses towards the Nangong clan as fast as lightning. The second guardian stayed near the array and led 30 god kings and 4,000 god lords to continue attacking the disciples of the 5 clans. Both sides had a clear division of labor and cooperated well. Compared to the 6 clans who fought individually and could not coordinate well, the God Slayer was able to unleash a stronger combat power. Nangong Buhua. I heard that the Kenshin appointed you as the deputy alliance leader. Haha, then you have to die. The great guardian chased after the Nangong clan disciples and locked onto Nangong Buhua's aura. He laughed coldly. Nangong Buhua did not reply. He only gave the order and led the disciples of the Nangong clan to escape towards the exit of the mystic realm. Even if the situation was dangerous, he could still remain calm and make the right decision. The first step was to remain vigilant and not fall into an ambush or trap. He had already done that. After this, he still had to lead the Nangong clan out of the mystic realm and escape the pursuit of the God Slayer. Only then could he consider asking Ji Tianqing for help, or save the disciples of the 5 clans. Unfortunately, no matter how desperately the Nangong clan fled, they were unable to escape the pursuit of the Protector and the God Kings. They had only managed to flee 80,000 kilometers away when they were stopped by the Great Protector and the 18 God Kings. Following that, the 1,000+ elite soldiers surrounded the Nangong clan disciples. Seeing that there was no way to escape, the disciples of the Nangong clan formed a formation and stood in front of each other. They were all equipped with the strongest defensive equipment and unleashed their most powerful strength, joining forces to resist the siege of the numerous soldiers. Nangong Buhua, Nangong Nihuang, the elders and deacons worked together to deal with the Great Protector and the 18 divine kings. Both sides did not waste any more words and immediately began to fight fiercely. Dazzling 5-colored divine light covered a radius of 20,000 kilometers. Various divine techniques clashed with wind, fire, and lightning, causing deafening explosions. The 1,000+ elite soldiers were very powerful and their attacks were abnormally fierce. However, the disciples of the Nangong clan worked together and cooperated very well. They actually managed to block the fierce attacks. The first round of battle ended very quickly. Only about 20 disciples of the Nangong clan were injured. This was not only the result of the disciples working together, but also the result of Nangong Buhua using his battleship to protect them. That battleship was Nangong Buhua's battleship, an upper-grade king-level divine artifact. It was also the most powerful battleship of the Nangong clan. If it were anyone else, they would definitely not be willing to use their own battleship as a divine artifact to protect their disciples. However, Nangong Buhua only wanted to reduce the casualties of his disciples and stall for time so that they could counterattack and escape from the mystic realm. Therefore, he did not feel sorry for his battleship. Not only did the huge battleship block many divine techniques, it also activated the divine array to increase its power to the maximum and released the most ferocious cannon fire. As a result, there were casualties among the disciples of the Nangong clan. The 1,000+ God Slayer also suffered casualties. In the first round of battle, both sides were evenly matched. Neither side had the upper hand. However, the 18 God Kings led by the Great Guardian firmly suppressed Nangong Buhua, Nangong Nihuang, and the others. After all, the Chief Protector's side had more divine king powerhouses. Furthermore, their overall strength was slightly stronger. The Great Guardian was a late-stage 9th Heaven God King. In terms of strength, he was stronger than Nangong Buhua. The average strength of the other 18 God Kings was also stronger than Nangong Nihuang, the elders, and the deacons. As a result, the battle high in the sky was even more intense. Nangong Buhua and the Nangong clan's God Kings were in an even more dangerous situation. After exchanging a few blows, Nangong Buhua was suppressed by the Great Guardian and was in a disadvantageous position. Nangong Nihuang and the deacons were injured, and their robes were stained with blood. The situation was not optimistic, but Nangong Buhua did not give up easily. He still used all his trump cards and ultimate skills to fight the Great Guardian fiercely. After exchanging more than 10 blows, he finally found an opportunity to send out a communication jade slip. It was a jade slip to report the situation to Ji Tianqing and ask for help. Nangong Buhua did not have much hope. He knew that Ji Tianqing was far to the north of Yanshu's cave and would not be able to come to his rescue. No matter how fast Ji Tianqing was, it would take him 1.5 days to reach here. By then, the battle would have ended. The disciples of the 6 clans would have been killed by the God Slayer. However, Nangong Buhua still insisted on carrying out his duty as the deputy chief. Even if he would be completely annihilated here, he had to tell Ji Tianqing the truth as soon as possible. This was the only way that Ji Tianqing could adjust his strategy in time and find a way to deal with the situation. He would not be ambushed by the God Slayer and fall into the Imperial Tutor's trap because of the lack of information. When Nangong Buhua sent out the message for help, a thought flashed across his mind. "Mr. Long, I have tried my best. It is a pity that I am unable to convince everyone in such a short period of time. In the end, I was unable to protect the other 5 clans. I have betrayed your trust. I am afraid that this failure will affect your revenge plan. I am really ashamed and sorry. If I die here today, I will let it go. But if I survive, I will not be able to face you." Sigh. With a long sigh in his heart, Nangong Buhua put away his distracting thoughts and did not think about anything else. He disregarded his life and death and used all his strength to display his ultimate skills to fight fiercely with the Great Guardian. Even if he had to die today, he would fight to the last moment and die with honor and dignity. Chapter 41-24. Within the secret realm, the battlefield was split into 2. On the other side, the Nangong clan and the Great Guardian were fighting fiercely, causing the sky to darken. On the other side of the battlefield, it was naturally near the Billow Domain Chief's manor. Within the ceiling formation, the disciples of the 5 clans were still risking their lives to resist the encirclement of the God Execution Army. They were bitterly holding on. After 15 minutes of fighting, the battle had reached its climax. The ceiling formation of 20,000 miles had suffered tens of thousands of ferocious attacks. It had long been riddled with holes, and many cracks had appeared. The disciples of the 5 clans were all excited. They thought that they would be able to destroy the ceiling formation if they could hold on for a while longer. When the ceiling formation was broken, their strength would return to normal and they would be able to break out of the encirclement. However, in the previous 15 minutes of fighting, the disciples of the 5 clans had suffered heavy casualties. There were originally more than 5,500 people. Now, there were only about 4,800 people left. More than 700 people had died in the battle. Most of their corpses were smashed into pieces. They died without a complete corpse. Among the 4,800 people who were still alive, more than 1,000 people had suffered light or heavy injuries. Of course, the 3,000 God Slayer did not have it easy either. They had also lost more than 400 people. They had all died in a chaotic battle. Another 300 people were injured. Their fighting strength had been greatly reduced. Fortunately, they had the help of the ceiling formation. Their losses were still considered better than the 5 clans. If it wasn't for this ceiling formation, they probably wouldn't be able to gain the slightest bit of advantage against more than 5,000 clan disciples with more than 3,000 of them. In addition, the number of God King experts of the 5 clans had reached 100. Although the average strength of these 100 God King experts was not as good as the 30 people of the God Slayer. Among these 100 people, there were a large number of intermediate God Kings and some lower God Kings. On the other hand, the 30 God Kings of the God Slayer were all above the 5th level of the God King realm. However, the 5 clans had an absolute advantage in terms of the number of God Kings. Even if their individual strength was lower, 2 or 3 of them could besiege one opponent. As a result, the God Kings led by the second protector did not manage to gain any advantage at all from the start of the battle. If the battle had continued for another 15 minutes, the sealing array would have been broken. At that time, the situation of the two protectors and the God Kings would be very dangerous. While the two sides were fighting, the second guardian was constantly observing the battlefield tens of thousands of miles away, paying attention to the first guardian's battle situation. He had been looking forward to seeing the great guardian deal with the Nangong clan as soon as possible and come back to help. Otherwise, with just him, over 30 godly kings, and 3,000 godly lords, they might not be able to defeat the 5 clans. The great enforcer was leading over 1,000 god-slayer subordinates to besiege the Nangong clan. While fighting, the great protector was also paying attention to the battle in the domain chief's mansion. Of course, he knew that the 2 protectors and the 3,000 god-slayer could only trap the 5 clans. It was very difficult to wipe them out. Even with the help of the sealing formation, it was impossible to do so. Therefore, he had to kill the members of the Nangong clan as soon as possible before rushing back to help the second guardian. This made him anxious. He kept urging the God-Slayer subordinates to speed up the attack and kill the Nangong clan at all costs. However, the 1,000 members of the Nangong clan were very united. They cooperated very well and their willpower was incomparably tenacious. In order to survive, they exploded with a strong desire to survive and burst out with all their potential. It was no exaggeration to say that they were sparing no expense, using all their means and trump cards to resist the encirclement of the Great Protector and the God Slayer. For example, Nangong Nihuang, a few elders, and many deacons were severely injured. Their robes and hair were soaked in blood. However, it was as if they did not know pain and fatigue. They still fought tenaciously and erupted with powerful strength. As time passed, the casualties on both sides increased. Although the Nangong clan's casualties were greater, the God Slayer did not have it easy either. The ratio of casualties on both sides was about 6 to 10. In other words, for every 6 God Slayer deaths, 10 members of the Nangong clan would die. Based on this ratio, the Nangong clan would be killed sooner or later. However, the Great Protector was not confident and did not know when he would be able to achieve this goal. It could be an hour later, or it could be 4 hours later. Of course, even if he killed all the members of the Nangong clan, the God Slayer under his command would suffer heavy casualties. About 400 to 500 people would survive. At that time, he would bring those 400 to 500 people to support the second protector. Would he be able to kill all the members of the 5 clans? Thinking of this, the Great Protector felt a little uneasy and a little vexed. Before we set off, the imperial tutor vowed that with me and the second protector leading 50 god kings and 5,000 Sir gods, it would be enough to destroy the southern army. However, it seems that the imperial tutor has underestimated the combat power of the southern army. The situation of the southern army was just as the imperial tutor had predicted. There were some internal conflicts and disagreements. The leaders of the 5 clans were obviously not willing to accept Nangong Buhua's command. However, they have more than 10,000 years of history and their combat power is not to be underestimated. If I had known earlier, I would have insisted on my own opinion and asked the imperial tutor to deploy 2,000 Sir gods and 30 god kings. Thinking of the conversation he had with the imperial tutor before he set off, he only felt regret. However, it was too late to say anything now. The Great Protector could only use another trump card to deal with the Nangong clan as soon as possible. Heaven Transformation Talisman. The Great Protector bellowed as he formed a seal with both hands and took out 12 colorful light balls. Swish! 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 The 12 colorful light balls revolved around him and shuttled back and forth as fast as lightning. Upon closer inspection, one could see that there was a god talisman in each of the light balls. They were either golden, crimson, icy blue, or dark green. The god talisman was not big, but it was exquisitely made and looked very exquisite. There were at least 3,000 patterns on the palm-sized god talisman. It contained dozens of array changes and could draw the god power of heaven and earth within tens of thousands of miles. This set of heaven transformation talismans was a divine item that the imperial tutor had spent 10 years and countless precious treasures to make. Each god talisman was a superior king-level talisman. However, when the 12 god talismans were combined, they could unleash the power of a superior king-level divine item. Of course, these 12 heaven transformation talismans were one-time consumables and would be gone after they were used. The imperial tutor had kept them for more than 500 years after he gave them to the great protector as a reward. He would not use them unless it was a matter of life and death. However, tonight's situation was special. The mission he was shouldering was too sacred. He had no choice but to sacrifice this set of heaven transformation talismans in order to complete the mission safely. The great protector was expressionless as he looked sharply at Nangong Buhua, Nangong Nihuang, and the other elders. He grinned and revealed a sinister sneer. "Go to hell, you traitors." Chapter 41-25. The great protector roared in a loud voice, and a murderous aura burst out from his body. At the same time, he formed a seal with both hands and shot out the 12 heaven transformation talismans with all his might. Swoosh! 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 The 12 palm-sized talismans expanded to the size of a mountain and burned with divine flames. They shone with the brilliance of the sun and streaked across the sky at lightning speed. They fell like the sun and smashed towards Nangong Buhua, Nangong Nihuang, and the others. The great guardian's goal was clear. He wanted to kill Nangong Buhua, Nangong Nihuang, and the others as soon as possible. It would be easier to kill these experts first and then deal with the disciples of the Nangong clan. Without the protection of Nangong Buhua and the other divine kings, the combat power of the 1,000 disciples of the Nangong clan was not strong. At least, in the eyes of the great guardian, they were ants that could be killed. The 12 huge, scorching suns were about to engulf Nangong Buhua and the others with destructive power. At this critical moment, the expressions of Nangong Buhua, Nangong Nihuang, and the others changed drastically. Their eyes were filled with horror. They knew very well what would happen when the 12 mountain-like talismans came crashing down. Many of the elders were filled with fear, and their eyes were filled with despair. However, they did not give up resisting. They used their trump cards and even forbidden secret skills to unleash their strongest combat power to form a defensive shield. Even the 1,000 disciples of the Nangong clan burned their vitality and lifespan to increase their combat power by 2 or 3 times. They worked together to cast spells to resist the talismans. Regardless of whether they could block the attack of the 12 talismans, at least they gave it their all and fought with their lives. The disciples of the Nangong clan showed amazing unity and willpower at this moment. Then, the most shocking and unforgettable thing happened. The battleship that had been fighting in the sky was already damaged and tattered. Even though it had used up 80% of its stored resources in the previous battle, it had no intention of retreating and continued to fight. The 2 divine kings and 20 Sir gods who stayed behind to control the battleship were admirably tenacious. At this moment, when they saw the 12 talismans crashing down, they did not hesitate to control the battleship to collide with the talismans. Under their control, the battleship spewed out 5 colored flames and unleashed its last bit of power. Its posture was like a moth darting into a flame. With the determination to die, it collided head-on with the divine talismans. This scene was so shocking, so tragic, and so resolute. Not only were the people of the Nangong clan full of admiration, many people were in tears. Even many of the soldiers of the God Punishment Army were shocked and in disbelief. They could not believe that in this cold and selfish world, there would be someone who would sacrifice themselves without hesitation just to fight for a chance to survive for their companions. Even though they were enemies, it did not stop them from admiring them. Boom! Boom boom boom! In the next moment, the gigantic divine warship collided with 4 divine talismans in a row, causing an earth-shattering explosion that shook the 9 heavens. The 4 sun-like divine talismans exploded with a loud rumble. Endless flames burst forth and swept across the sky for 100,000 miles. The battleship was also blasted to pieces, turning into billions of pieces in a shocking explosion that scattered between heaven and earth. The 2 divine kings and 20 Sir gods who were controlling the battleship were naturally smashed into pieces. However, their sacrifice successfully blocked the 4 divine talismans. Even though the 4 divine talismans exploded and unleashed destructive power, the timing of the explosion were too late. However, the location and timing of their explosions were not right. The terrifying 5-colored flames spread high in the sky, but did not affect the disciples of the Nangong clan much. At least, the 4 divine talismans did not achieve the expected effect and only affected 100 or so disciples of the Nangong clan. More than 20 of them were killed and the rest were injured. Their lives were not in danger. The other 8 divine talismans that were as large as mountains hit the defensive shield formed by Nangong Buhua, Nangong Nihuang, the elders, and the deacons. The thick and heavy 5-colored light shield within 1,000 miles was directly smashed into pieces and splashed everywhere. The 8 divine talismans also exploded with flames that covered the sky and flooded an area of tens of thousands of miles. All the mountains and rivers in the area were turned into ashes and scorched ruins in the 5-colored flames. Originally, such a destructive 5-colored flame could kill more than 80% of the Nangong clan's over 1,000 people. However, the 1,000 or so disciples of the Nangong clan did their best to form a defensive shield. This was equivalent to the 3rd line of defense and barrier of the Nangong clan. The first was the battleship and the second was the shield formed by Nangong Buhua and the others. However, more than 80% of the 5-colored flames' power was neutralized. Even though the flames engulfed the disciples of the Nangong clan, there were not many casualties. Only 100 or so disciples of the Nangong clan were killed and 200 or so were injured. This result was far from what the Great Guardian had expected. When the Great Guardian saw that Nangong Buhua and the others were still intact, as well as the thousands of Nangong clan members, he was so angry that his face turned green and his eyes turned red. Damn it! The Great Guardian took out the heavenly talisman reluctantly, but this was the result. How could he be satisfied? However, he did not have a similar trump card or divine item anymore. No matter how angry he was, he could only lead the God Slayer under his command to fight the Nangong clan and gradually reduce their numbers. It was unrealistic to think that he could kill Nangong Buhua and the others quickly through other means. The explosion of the 12 heavenly talismans was indeed terrifying. The area within 100,000 miles was flattened and turned into ruins. The entire secret realm was shaking. The space was shattered and cracks appeared in the void. 80,000 miles away, the battlefield above the Surge Domain Chief's mansion was also affected by the 5-colored flames. The ceiling array that was already full of cracks and on the verge of collapse collapsed on the spot. When the array dissipated, the disciples of the 5 clans were elated. They cheered excitedly and smiled with success. After the array collapsed, the pressure on them was greatly reduced, and their combat power returned to normal. Now, with their advantage in numbers, they could definitely kill the 2 great guardians and the 3,000 God Slayer. However, just as the disciples of the 5 clans were filled with joy, divine light shot up from all directions. Swoosh! In the blink of an eye, divine light gathered in the sky and formed another ceiling array with a radius of 30,000 miles. Seeing this scene, the disciples of the 5 clans were stunned. Everyone was filled with anger. Chapter 41-26. Didn't we just break one layer of the seal array? Why is there another layer? Damn those insidious old bastards. They set up 2 layers of the seal array. Damn it. I thought we were out of trouble. I didn't expect to come again. Since those two white-haired old bastards are so insidious, they probably set up a third layer of the seal array. How long would it take to set up such an array? Unless they set up an ambush 5 or 6 days in advance, they couldn't have set up 3 layers of the seal array. In other words, if we break the second layer of the seal array, we'll be out of trouble. The disciples of the 5 clans couldn't help but curse and discuss when they saw the second seal array. However, no matter how angry they were, it was useless. They could only continue to fight and attack the seal array above their heads. The scene from before played out again. Within a radius of 30,000 miles, divine light was still flickering. All kinds of wind, fire, and lightning covered the sky. As time went by, the number of people on both sides continued to decrease. The domain chief's mansion beneath their feet had long been destroyed in the great battle and had been reduced to ruins. Of course, the hundreds of palaces and mansions were destroyed, but neither side felt sorry. Only the Ripple domain master, who was imprisoned, would feel heartache when he saw his 1,000 years of hard work and foundation turn into nothing. On the other side, the battle between the Nangong clan and the Great Guardian was still going on. The number of casualties on both sides kept increasing, but the ratio was still 6 to 10. Overall, the number of casualties didn't increase quickly. The Nangong clan's cohesiveness and tenacity were beyond expectations. The Great Guardian estimated that it would take at least 4 hours to kill everyone in the Nangong clan. However, the second Guardian and the 3,000 God Slayer wouldn't be able to hold on for 4 hours. At that time, the battle situation would definitely change. It might even be reversed. Half an hour ago. At the northern border of the Ripple domain. The God-slaying battleship streaked across the sky like a bolt of lightning, flying toward the south at the fastest speed. Usually, when Ji Tianqing traveled on the God-slaying battleship, the battleship would hide its flames and aura. However, at this moment, in order to make the battleship reach its maximum speed, Bai Long didn't waste his divine power on hiding his tracks. After all, the God-slaying battleship had been operating at its limit. Every hour, it would consume resources worth billions of God stones. So far, in less than a day, the God Slayer battleship had already consumed 80 billion resources. He had paid such a huge price just to get to the Rippling Waves domain as soon as possible. In the cockpit of the battleship, the White Dragon was still focused on controlling the array formation of the divine ship. Ji Tianqing sat cross-legged on a jade couch, his expression calm as he closed his eyes and rested. Originally, no matter how fast the God-slaying battleship was, it was impossible for it to cross 7 regions in a single day and arrive at the border of the Rippling region. However, Ji Tianqing was flexible and could find the fastest way. The Rebel Alliance had taken over all the domains from his domain to the Wavy Billow domain. The domain lords of these domains had all surrendered to the Rebel Alliance. As such, Ji Tianqing ordered the various domain lords along the way to give him the authority to use the teleportation divine array. Every time he entered a region, he would arrive at a certain empire in the north of the region through a teleportation divine formation and quickly arrive at a certain place in the south of the region. Usually, a teleportation array could help him travel from tens of millions of miles to hundreds of millions of miles. This was much faster than the God-slaying battleship. That was why he could create such a miracle and enter the Rippling Waves domain in less than a day. Unfortunately, the Rebel Alliance hadn't conquered the Rippling Waves domain yet. Ji Tianqing also couldn't use the teleportation array to quickly reach the center of the Rippling Waves domain from the northern border. The God-slaying battleship could only travel at full speed toward the Rippling Waves secret realm in the center of the region. Suddenly, a spiritual light flew from the sky and landed in front of Ji Tianqing. After the spiritual light dissipated, an exquisite communication jade slip was revealed. Seeing this jade slip, Ji Tianqing frowned and a light flashed in his eyes. This was the jade slip he had left for Nangong Buhua. It was specially used to report urgent and important matters. When he saw this jade slip, he guessed that something must have happened to the southern army. Swoosh! He quickly picked up the jade slip and used his divine sense to read the message inside. Just as he expected. Nangong Buhua's slightly hoarse and anxious voice immediately sounded in his mind. Alliance Master, we were ambushed in the Rippling Wave's secret realm and are in a critical situation. I'm afraid we won't be able to escape unscathed. The Rippling Wave's domain lord is imprisoned and the 5,000 soldiers who ambushed us are led by the first guardian and second guardian of the Azura Divine Palace. This is the Imperial Tutor's scheme. Alliance Master, you must be careful. Although it was a distressed jade slip, Nangong Buhua only reported the situation and didn't ask for help. In fact, knowing that he couldn't escape unscathed, he was more worried about Ji Tianqing's safety. It's just as I expected. Ji Tianqing put away the jade slip and muttered in a low voice with a frown. Previously, he had been seized by a sudden impulse and had had so many bad premonitions and a strong sense of danger. Before he could verify it, he couldn't completely believe it. He hoped that his premonition was wrong. But reality proved that his prediction was right. This made him understand one thing. It seems that although I can't get the divine power of merit rewarded by the heavenly way, I have some kind of connection with the heavenly way. This kind of premonition can actually predict danger in advance. It's really mysterious. At this time, White Dragon turned his head and asked, Master, what happened? Ji Tianqing replied calmly, as I expected, the Emperor's preceptor sent a group of 5,000 elite soldiers to set up a trap in the secret realm of waves, ambushing the southern army. White Dragon was instantly filled with worry and asked with concern, what's the situation now? Did the southern army escape the siege? How are the casualties? Ji Tianqing shook his head and said, Nangong Buhua only sent this message and it was hurried and vague. It wasn't detailed enough. This means that they are in a very dangerous situation and must be fighting a fierce battle. The Imperial Tutor has been planning this for a long time and the 5,000 elite soldiers are waiting for the enemy to arrive. The southern army must have suffered heavy casualties. White Dragon became more and more worried and asked bitterly, but the god-slaying battleship's speed has increased to the limit. What should we do? Don't panic. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said, just continue to move forward at full speed. We should reach the Rippling Wave's secret realm in 2 hours. Although the southern army has been ambushed and will suffer heavy casualties, they are still ancient clans. However, they were the 6 great ancient clans after all, and had over 6,000 elite experts and experts. No matter how fierce the enemy is, they can't destroy the southern army in such a short time. I believe that Nangong Buhua and the other clan leaders can hold on for 2 hours and wait for my rescue. Chapter 41-27. Ji Tianqing had considered this problem when arranging the members of the southern army. The reason why he had the 6 clans form the southern army was to prevent the Imperial Tutor from splitting up and attacking the 2 armies one by one. Although the southern army was not harmonious and there would be some disagreements between the 6 clans. This was all within his expectations and could be controlled. He believed that with Nangong Buhua's strength and attitude, he would eventually solve this problem. At the same time, Ji Tianqing also maintained a corresponding affirmation and trust in the southern army's combat power. No matter how disharmonious the 6 clans were, they were all ancient inheritances with 30,000 years of history. Even if they were ambushed by more than 5,000 God Slayer, they would not be completely defeated and could at least hold on for a long time. Because of this, although he was worried, he was not as worried as he was. The real situation on the battlefield was basically the same as Ji Tianqing's prediction. The battle on the 2 battlefields was still going on, and the Nangong clan, which had suffered heavy casualties, was still struggling to hold on. There were only about 4,000 people left in the 5 clans, and they were still desperately fighting back in the ceiling array, wildly attacking the defensive light shield. The second guardian and the God Slayer under his command were also in a tense state, and they were attacking the 5 clans' disciples with all their might. Tens of thousands of divine light shadows still covered the sky. Earth-shattering collisions and explosions were constantly heard, reverberating in the heavens and the earth. The casualties on both sides were constantly increasing, and the surviving soldiers were also riddled with scars, and their strength was constantly weakening. But no one would retreat or give up, and they vowed to fight until the end. The God Slayer had spent so much time and effort to complete this ambush, and no matter what, they would swallow the Southern Army. Even if they were completely wiped out, they would perish together with the Southern Army. This was their mission. As for the Southern Army, the Nangong clan was determined to break out of the encirclement. If there was a chance to rescue the other 5 clans, they would naturally join up with them and escape the secret realm together. If their casualties were too heavy, they could only protect themselves first. At least, the Southern Army could not be completely wiped out. Because the Nangong clan's casualties were too heavy, the surviving disciples were determined to die and treated this battle as the last battle of their lives. Therefore, they erupted with unprecedented combat power, and they were unusually tenacious. Especially Nangong Buhua, Nangong Nihuang, and a few elders, they were bathed in blood and extremely tenacious. Even the great guardian was helpless and could only fight steadily and surely. He suddenly felt somewhat regretful. If he had known that the Southern Army's combat power was so strong, he would not have forcefully imprisoned the Wavy God Domain's leader and thousands of her subordinates when he had just entered the Wavy secret realm. The Wavy Zone Master's forces were weak, with only a little over 1,000 monarchs and a few god kings under her command. Great lords, lord of the God Slayers' forces. God Slayers as had. The God Slayer S Slayer had God Slayers Domain Slayers as Goddess and this S's. In that case, the soldiers under the Domain Master's command could be used as cannon fodder. God slaying of the God Slayer of the God. Was God die, the God gods. The be more of them. Time passed quietly. Half an hour passed quickly. More than half of the Nangong clan's 1,000 people had been killed or injured. Only about 600 people were left. Of the 1,800 God Slayer soldiers under the command of the Great Protector, only 1,200 remained. Tens of thousands of miles away, the battle near the Domain Chief's mansion was also very fierce. Of the 5,000 people from the 5 clans, there were only about 4,200 people left. Of the 3,200 God Slayer subordinates under the Second Protector, more than 900 were killed or injured. Only 2,200 remained. The fierce battle between the two battlefields sent out destructive shockwaves that destroyed everything within a radius of 100,000 miles. Even the spatial barrier of the secret realm had been shattered. Numerous void cracks and pitch-black holes had appeared. Finally, the second seal was broken by the disciples of the 5 clans. Along with a series of cracking noises, the huge defensive light screen fell apart, turning into pieces that scattered all over the ruins. This time, the disciples of the 5 clans had learned their lesson. Even when they saw the seal being broken, they didn't cheer excitedly, nor did they look relieved. With the previous lesson, no one dared to be excited. They were all on guard and guessing whether the God Slayer had a backup plan or whether he had set up a third seal. Fortunately, as many Divine King experts had analyzed, the God Slayer didn't have enough time. The God Slayer didn't have much time. He had already done his best to set up 2 seals in a hurry. As for the third seal, it was impossible to complete it. The third layer of the formation that everyone expected did not appear. The Second Protector also quickly retreated with his 2,200 subordinates. Seeing this, the 5 clans' patriarchs and elders all hesitated. They looked at each other and hurriedly communicated with each other. They didn't act rashly. If it were in the past, seeing the Second Protector retreating with the God Slayer, they would have pounced on him and launched a counterattack. However, they had learned their lesson and wouldn't act rashly again. It looks like the God Slayer didn't have time to set up the third seal. That might not be the case. Don't forget the lesson from before. It's better to be cautious. The second protector and those God Slayer retreated. They might be trying to numb our minds and make us lower our guard, luring us into another trap. Don't think too much. Everything within 100,000 miles has been razed to the ground and turned into ruins. If they had set up an ambush, it would have been activated or even destroyed by the aftermath of the battle. That makes sense. Then what are we waiting for? Let's take advantage of the victory and kill those bastards. We have to fight back. We can't let those bastards escape. Everyone, look. The Nangong clan has suffered heavy casualties. If we don't go and support them as soon as possible, I'm afraid they'll be completely wiped out. Even if the Nangong clan is completely wiped out. Forget it. We're a whole, after all. We're all part of the Rebel Alliance's Southern Army. We share honor and disgrace. We can't just stand by and watch them die. That's right. Even if we're not on good terms with the Nangong clan, Nangong Buhua has done his duty. He reminded us twice before. If the Nangong clan is completely wiped out, we won't be able to face the alliance leader. Let's put aside our prejudices and work together. The 5 clans' patriarchs and elders discussed for a while and quickly reached a consensus. They spread out and formed a formation to chase after the second protector and the God Slayer. They wanted to defeat them as soon as possible. Then, they would go and support the Nangong clan. Chapter 41-28. The second guardian and the 2,200 soldiers of the God-punishing legion were extremely anxious. Previously, with the help of the sealing formation, they could still suppress the disciples of the 5 clans. Now, without the sealing formation, it was as difficult as ascending to the heavens for the 2,200 of them to deal with the 4,200 people of the 5 clans. The number of divine lords was 2,000 less than the other party. The number of God King experts was also over 50 less than the other party. It was obvious that if they fought recklessly, the second guardian and the God Slayer would definitely be defeated or even wiped out. Therefore, when the disciples of the 5 clans caught up, the second guardian's strategy was to fight and wander, retreating as he fought. He would not fight recklessly with the other party, nor would he waste his strength. What he wanted to do was to preserve his strength and stall for time, waiting for the great guardian to deal with the Nangong clan before reuniting with him. The great guardian had the same idea. But unfortunately, the clan leaders and elders of the 5 clans had guessed the second guardian's thoughts. They did not give the second guardian a chance to stall for time. The more the second guardian retreated, the more ferocious their attacks were, and the more ferocious their fighting strength was. Previously, the disciples of the 5 clans were restrained by the sealing formation, so their strength was reduced. Now that they were free, everyone could use their full strength. The power they could unleash was unimaginable. Kill. What bullsh** T God Slayer, without schemes and tricks, they are just a bunch of chickens and dogs. Brothers, kill them all and avenge our dead brothers. Kill the enemy and show our might. The disciples of the 5 clans roared and roared, charging forward without caring about their own safety. On the battlefield, a dazzling divine light lit up again, and an earth-shattering battle broke out, giving off a deafening sound. Soldiers from both sides were constantly injured and killed in the chaotic battle, leaving no corpses behind. But now, the situation was reversed. The disciples of the 5 clans suffered light casualties, while the second guardian and the God Slayer under his command suffered heavy casualties. After all, the 5 clans had more disciples and had an absolute advantage. Tens of thousands of miles away, the great guardian saw that the second guardian and the God Slayer were being chased down. They were fighting and retreating at the same time. He immediately frowned and looked very embarrassed. Although he had expected this to happen, he did not expect it to happen so quickly. The Nangong clan was still fighting desperately, and he couldn't get away to help the second guardian and the others. At the same time, Nangong Buhua and the others, who were already covered in wounds, saw the 5 families counterattack. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief and felt even more confident. After all, the disciples of the 5 great clans had managed to escape, and while they fought back against the second guardian and the god slayer, they were still approaching the Nangong clan. Looking at their posture, it was clear that they were here to reinforce the Nangong clan. This made Nangong Buhua feel slightly comforted, and his disappointment towards the 5 clans lessened a lot. Unknowingly, 45 minutes had passed. The battle in the field was about to come to an end. The second protector led his god slayer away from the previous battlefield and finally met up with the great protector and the others. However, at this time, the second protector was already heavily injured, and his body was covered in blood. More than half of the 2,200 god slayer under his command had been killed, and only a few dozen people were left. On the other hand, there were still more than 3,800 disciples of the 5 great clans, and the injuries of the injured were relatively light. On this battlefield, the 5 great clans were naturally victorious, and the second protector and the god slayer had suffered a crushing defeat. However, the situation of the great protector and the Nangong clan was the opposite. The great protector only suffered light injuries, and only 3 god kings under his command died. The remaining 15 people who survived were not heavily injured. Nangong Buhua, on the other hand, was heavily injured. Nangong Nihuang, a few elders, and many deacons were also heavily injured. Another 6 god kings died in the bloody battle. Of the 1,800 god slayer under the great protector, more than 500 died, and more than 600 were injured. Out of the 1,200 disciples of the Nangong clan, more than 700 of them were killed, and the remaining 500 or so were severely injured. Originally, the Nangong clan was already an arrow at the end of its flight. If the battle continued for half an hour, the Nangong clan would have been defeated and quickly exterminated. However, the second protector led the remaining soldiers and joined up with the great protector. The 3,800 people of the 5 great clans also joined up with the Nangong clan. The 2 battlefields merged into one. This was naturally advantageous to the second protector and the god slayer under his command. However, it was even more advantageous to the Nangong clan. At least, the Nangong clan had a chance to breathe and escape danger. The 6 great clans temporarily abandoned their prejudices and joined forces to surround the great protector, the second protector, and the god slayer. The southern army had 4,400 people left, while the god slayer only had 2,300 people left. The initiative returned to the southern army, and the god slayer was forced into a passive position. No one had expected such a subversive outcome. The disciples of the 5 great clans only surrounded the god slayer and were not in a hurry to attack. Both sides faced each other in the sky, taking the opportunity to recuperate and treat their injuries. The Divine King experts of the 5 great clans all revealed complacent sneers as they mocked and ridiculed the great protector and the second protector. This is the so-called god slayer. The secret weapon that the imperial tutor had carefully planned for so long. What a joke. Protectors, you guys arrived here in advance and set up a trap. Why do you only have this little trick? This is too disappointing. We thought that the imperial tutor would be earth-shattering when he made his move. We didn't expect that it would be like playing house. If you only have this little ability, then I'm afraid that you will all be wiped out here today. Facing the ridicule of so many experts, the great protector and the second protector were filled with anger, but they were also abnormally sullen. They wanted to refute, but they did not know where to start. After all, what the other party said was the truth. They had seized the initiative and set up a trap and ambush in advance. They thought that it was a sure thing. However, they did not expect that it would actually be like this in the end. Before the start of the battle, they had flaunted their prowess and the southern army had panicked. Now, the southern army had turned the tables and victory was in their hands. However, they were heavily surrounded and could not escape even if they had wings. This was simply too face-slapping. The Great Protector's face was gloomy. He was so angry that he could not speak. The regret in his heart was even more intense. However, the Second Protector could not hold back his anger. He roared with a ferocious expression, "You traitors, don't be so arrogant. The battle is not over yet. The victor is still unknown. It's absolutely impossible for you to be a match for us with your battered and defeated army." The Second Protector's words were a little exaggerated. However, he was right about one thing. The battle was not over yet. The outcome was indeed unknown. Even if the Southern army had the advantage on the surface, it was still somewhat difficult to destroy the God Slayer. Moreover, they would have to pay a terrible price. The patriarchs of the 5 great clans actually wanted to take the opportunity to disturb the morale of the God Slayer's army. It would be best if they could make the other side collapse without attacking. Chapter 41-29. The patriarchs of the ancient clans, as well as the first and second guardians of the God Slayer, were all smart people. In fact, everyone had a clear understanding of the current situation. It was true that the Southern army had the upper hand, but the God Slayer could still inflict heavy losses on the Southern army if he wanted to die together with them. If the two sides fought to the death, the final result would most likely be, the God Slayer would be completely destroyed, and only a little more than 1,000 people in the Southern army would survive. In that case, each of the 6 ancient clans would only have 200 or 300 people left. It would be an unprecedented loss. The name of the South Road Army would probably only exist in name. This was the result that the 6 patriarchs didn't want to see. However, no matter how the 5 patriarchs mocked the God Slayer and attacked the enemy's morale, they couldn't make the God Slayer depressed, let alone surrender on the spot. Therefore, the Southern army had to make a choice as soon as possible. Should they fight to the death with the God-punishing army? Should they pay a heavy price to completely annihilate the God-punishing army? Or should they retreat from the wavy secret realm and make plans after resting? The reason why the Southern army made the choice and not the God Slayer was because they had the initiative. The atmosphere on the battlefield immediately eased. Even the air became much quieter. The patriarchs of the 5 ancient clans began to discuss telepathically. "Everyone, there are only 2 paths in front of us. We can either fight to the death and eliminate the God Slayer in one go. Or we can follow the previous plan and retreat from the wavy secret realm. Anyway, the wavy domain's main residence has been destroyed, and there's no teleportation formation to the outside world. The God Slayer will remain in the wavy secret realm. We only need to block the entrance to stop them. Killing the God Slayer in one go will definitely be a great achievement, but will also suffer heavy casualties. I estimate that only a little more than 1,000 people will be left. In that case, the Southern army will only exist in name. Can we afford such losses? In comparison, I also think that retreating from the wavy secret realm and making other plans is more reliable. Speaking of which, let's ask Nangong Buhua for his opinion. After all, he is the Vice-Alliance leader in name, and the Nangong clan has suffered such terrible losses. Forget it, you can ask him. While the clan leaders were discussing, someone asked for Nangong Buhua's opinion, which made everyone feel awkward. However, after the previous incident, everyone's prejudice against Nangong Buhua had lessened. Therefore, the patriarchs tacitly agreed. The patriarch of the Jiang family, Jiang Chuyun, sent a voice transmission to Nangong Buhua on behalf of the other patriarchs, asking for his opinion. Nangong Buhua's injuries were very serious. He was silently adjusting his breath and suppressing the injuries in his internal organs. When he heard Jiang Chuyun's question, he answered without the slightest hesitation, "If I were to make such an important decision on my own, I'm afraid that the morale of the army would be affected. Why don't I ask everyone to wait for a moment while I report the situation to the Alliance Master and ask him to make a decision?" Obviously, Nangong Buhua knew that the 5 patriarchs might not listen to him. Thus, he did not make the decision and left the choice to Ji Tianqing. No matter what decision Ji Tianqing made, no one had anything to say, and everyone would obey. This was no doubt the best solution. Jiang Chuyun was stunned for a moment. He did not expect Nangong Buhua to handle the matter this way. However, he came back to his senses and nodded to show that he understood. Nangong Buhua took out a communication jade slip and started to input a message, preparing to report it to Ji Tianqing. However, at this moment, something unexpected happened. In the sky to the south of the battlefield, a dazzling white light lit up in the direction of the secret realm's entrance. A mighty and majestic divine warship that was thousands of feet long tore through the sky at lightning speed and headed straight for the battlefield. The warship was unbelievably fast. It did not conceal its divine light and powerful aura at all. The thousands of people on the battlefield were alarmed. They all turned to look at the entrance and fixed their eyes on the divine warship. Even Nangong Buhua, who was sending a message, looked up at the sky subconsciously and stopped sending messages. In just 2 short breaths, the magnificent battleship had crossed 80,000 miles in the sky and arrived above the battlefield. Swoosh! The mighty and majestic warship stopped high in the sky and quickly retracted its dazzling divine light and powerful divine power. Countless people's hearts were in their mouths as they stared at the divine warship. The same question popped up in their minds. Which expert's warship is this? Why did it barge into the billowing secret realm at this time? Could it be the enemy's strong reinforcements? The Great Guardian and Second Guardian were sure that the Imperial Tutor was very confident in the God Slayer and would not send any experts as reinforcements. Therefore, this warship that suddenly appeared was very likely the Rebel Alliance's reinforcements. The 6 clans of the Southern Army also had the same question and worry. They all knew that other than Alliance Master Kenshin, no other expert would help them. However, the Alliance Master was hundreds of millions of miles away at this time. Even if he knew that they were ambushed in the billowing secret realm, he would not be able to rush over. Therefore, this warship that appeared out of nowhere was most likely the reinforcements of the God Slayer, an expert sent by the Imperial Tutor. In an instant, both sides on the battlefield tensed up. They shrank their formation and got into a defensive posture. At this time, under the watchful eyes of thousands of people, the warship was put away. A handsome white figure appeared high in the sky. He stood in the air and looked down on the battlefield. There was also a handsome and devilishly handsome white-haired young man in silver armor standing behind him like an attendant. Everyone's eyes ignored the white-haired young man and focused on the white-robed figure. When everyone saw his appearance, their expressions changed drastically. Shock and disbelief were written all over their faces. There were even more than 1,000 people who could not help but exclaim. "Oh my God! It's him! How can it be him? I don't believe it. Isn't he in the north? How can he be here? I don't believe it. This must be an illusion. Someone must be pretending to be him. Oh my God, it's the Alliance Master. Oh my God, isn't the Alliance Master in the north? Why does it seem like he fell from the sky? It's been less than 2 hours since we were ambushed. How did the Alliance Master get here? Ha ha ha. I've said it before. Lord Kenshin is omnipotent. He must have mastered some kind of ultimate divine ability that allows him to cross a region in an instant and travel freely in the God realm. Although you mentioned this before, we all thought it was ridiculous and nonsensical. However, it seems like you guessed right. My Alliance Master is amazing. This is unbelievable. It's a miracle. Within 2 hours, he crossed 7 to 8 regions and appeared in front of us out of nowhere. Even the storytellers in the tea house would not dare to make up such a story, right? Lord Alliance Leader is our guardian angel. He is omnipotent. Chapter 4130. Without a doubt. It was as if a king had descended from the heavens. It was Ji Tianqing. The situation was just as he had guessed. When he arrived at the battlefield, the southern army was still able to hold on and had not been defeated. However, he did not expect both sides to have a temporary truce. It seemed like the southern army had the upper hand. Among the thousands of people on the battlefield, there was no one who didn't know Ji Tianqing. When both sides saw Ji Tianqing appear, their reactions and expressions were different. The God Slayer was filled with shock and disbelief. It was too absurd. At the same time, they were filled with fear and uneasiness. Their morale was quickly decreasing. As for the 4,000 people of the southern army, they were filled with shock and joy. They were filled with admiration and pride. At this moment, Kenshin's image in their hearts rose to another level. He had become their guardian, an omnipotent king. The worries that had been hidden in the hearts of more than 4,400 clan members had all been lifted. When they saw Kenshin appear, they were completely at ease. In their minds, Kenshin was invincible. Even if Kenshin was alone, he could kill more than 2,000 God Slayer. Even if they did not participate in the battle and just watched from the side, it would not affect the outcome. Hence, the atmosphere on the battlefield became polarized. On one side, it was gloomy and dead silent. The crowd was filled with fear and despair. On the other side, everyone was cheering. Their blood was boiling and they were in high spirits. Some of them were even dancing with joy. Ji Tianqing looked down at the battlefield. His gaze swept across the battlefield and finally landed on Nangong Buhua and the others. He ignored the God Slayer and flew to Nangong Buhua and the others with White Dragon. Why did the Nangong clan suffer so many casualties? How are your injuries? As soon as they met, Ji Tianqing interrupted Nangong Buhua and the others who were about to bow and asked about the situation in a concerned tone. This scene made the 500 surviving Nangong clan members feel warm and uplifted. No matter how great the Nangong clan's sacrifice was, they felt that it was worth it to gain the Kenshin's trust and concern. Nangong Nihuang was about to explain the reason when Nangong Buhua waved his hand and said with shame, reporting to the Alliance Master, "It was my fault that everyone fell into an ambush and sacrificed themselves. Please allow this old man to report the details after the battle." On the other side, the patriarchs of the 5 families thought that Nangong Buhua would complain when he saw Kenshin. For example, he complained that the 5 clans did not respect orders and were greedy for merit, which led to everyone being ambushed. However, Nangong Buhua did not do so. On the contrary, he did not blame the 5 clans at all. Instead, he took the blame on himself. This made the people of the 5 clans heave a sigh of relief. At the same time, they felt ashamed and self-reproachful. Their expressions were not very natural. Ji Tianqing took a deep look at Nangong Buhua and nodded. "Okay, your injuries are too serious for you to report the military situation in detail. Let's talk about it later. All of you retreat far away and arrange for the disciples to circulate their energy and heal their injuries. As for the rest, leave it to me." Ji Tianqing waved his hand and asked the people of the Nangong clan to retreat and heal their injuries. He was very confident and domineering. Of course, he did not just wave his hand to give an order. He also sent out a hazy green light that splashed on the bodies of the Nangong clan disciples. The green light entered the bodies of the 500 people and immediately made them feel cool and comfortable. Most of their injuries disappeared and their divine power recovered by a lot. This seemingly casual, group healing technique won the gratitude of the Nangong clan disciples. It also made the eyes of the disciples of the 5 families shine with admiration and envy. After the people of the Nangong clan retreated, Ji Tianqing looked at the patriarchs and elders of the 5 families. His expression was solemn as he asked in a dignified tone, "This result is not what you want to see, nor is it what you want, right?" There was a deeper meaning in this sentence. The faces of the 5 patriarchs darkened. They lowered their heads and looked elsewhere, not daring to look at Ji Tianqing. Of course, this was a sign of guilt. Ji Tianqing did not reprimand them in front of everyone. He said expressionlessly, "We will talk about the details after the battle. But now, I hope that you can make up for your mistakes and not disappoint me a second time." The faces and eyes of the 5 patriarchs were a little ashamed and respectful at the same time. They thought to themselves, it has only been 2 hours and Nangong Buhua did not have the chance to report the details. How did Kenshin know the truth? Moreover, Nangong Buhua did not complain and even took the initiative to take responsibility. Could it be that Kenshin had already predicted that there would be prejudice and disagreements within the Southern Army and that the 5 families would not listen to Nangong Buhua's orders? If that was the case, did it not mean that Kenshin had already seen through everyone's hearts? Everyone's selfishness and schemes could not be hidden in front of Kenshin. It was too scary. In the future, they should just carry out their missions obediently. If there were any more problems, they did not know how Kenshin would punish them. Thinking of this, the 5 patriarchs saluted and said in unison, "We obey the alliance leader's orders." Seeing that the 5 patriarchs had a good attitude in admitting their mistakes, Ji Tianqing did not pursue the matter further. He then turned to look at the Great Guardian, Second Guardian, and the 2000 God Slayer. "Ji not bad, Ji not bad. You two are still alive." Ji Tianqing's gaze locked onto the 2 guardians, and his lips curled into a cold smile. Obviously, the 2 guardians had participated in the War of the Gods 1,000 years ago when the 5 god emperors had besieged him. Ji Tianqing had known them long before that. Ever since Ji Tianqing had arrived, he had ignored the God Slayer and only focused on talking to the Southern Army. The 2 guardians were embarrassed and angry that the God Slayer had been ignored. At this moment, hearing Ji Tianqing's mocking and sarcastic words, the 2 of them were furious. "Kenshin, even you, a dead person, can come back to life. How can we die? Kenshin, you only dare to be arrogant in front of us. If you have the ability, go assassinate the imperial tutor and fight against His Majesty the God Emperor. Humph, even if you come back to life, you will still die without a doubt if you meet His Majesty the God Emperor again." The 2 guardians retorted back at Ji Tianqing with ferocious expressions. Ji Tianqing, however, was not angry. He sneered and said, "The imperial tutor is destined to die soon. The Azura God Emperor will also be killed by me one day. But you will not see any of this. Because you are going to die soon." The 2 guardians were so angry that their eyes widened and they wanted to retort. However, Ji Tianqing did not waste any more words with them. He said murderously, "You don't need to say any last words. Go on your way now." With that, he formed a divine seal with both hands and used an ultimate divine ability. Sword Rain. Against more than 2,000 divine lords, this earth-shattering sword divine ability had always been the best killing weapon. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. In the next moment, tens of thousands of stars lit up in the sky and poured down like meteors. The clan leaders of the 5 clans also took the lead and brandished their divine weapons, besieging the God Punishment Army. More than 4,400 disciples of the big clans all had their blood boiling. They performed their abilities with lofty sentiments and started the encirclement. Chapter 41-31. A total of 90,000 stellar swords descended from the sky with a terrifying might that could annihilate all things. The blazing sun was obscured, and everything within tens of thousands of miles was transformed into a resplendent world of silver light. Before the swords arrived, a terrifying suppressive force had already enveloped more than 2,000 God Slayer. The God Slayers' hearts were shrouded in a layer of haze, and a deep sense of fear welled up in their hearts. As a result, their combat power naturally decreased as well. The first guardian, second guardian, and several dozen god kings all sensed the terrifying might of the stellar swords, and their expressions changed drastically as fear filled their hearts. But they could not panic. They knew that they could not escape the onslaught of the stellar swords, so they could only work together to defend. Swish! 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 They were very fast, and in an instant, they had formed a massive shield. More than 2,300 God Slayer also came back to their senses, and they worked together to release their vigorous divine power, forming a shield of light that spanned 1,000 miles. The next moment, the stellar swords that blotted out the sky poured down like a torrential downpour, viciously slamming into the stellar shield. Bam! 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 Rumble! Rumble! Muffled booms erupted, reverberating through the world in a deafening manner. Even though the two shields formed by the God Slayer possessed extremely powerful defensive capabilities, they were still unable to withstand the onslaught of the stellar swords. However, under the bombardment of tens of thousands of starry swords, it still appeared weak and could not withstand a single blow. Accompanied by earth-shaking booms, the shields formed by the 2,000 God Slayer were the first to be shattered by the stellar swords, sending shards of stellar swords into the sky. Immediately afterward, the destructive stellar swords viciously slammed into the shields formed by the first guardian, second guardian, and the other god kings. The result was the same. The shields formed by these god kings were unable to block the onslaught of the stellar swords, and they instantly shattered, sending shards everywhere. Thus, more than 2,300 God Slayer were swallowed up by the stellar swords. Bam! 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 Rumble! With deafening booms, the area within tens of thousands of miles was transformed into a sea of stellar swords, and almost nothing could be seen. Amidst the sword light that filled the sky, there were mournful wails, painful screams, and roars of those on the brink of death. Hundreds of God Slayers' bodies were smashed to pieces by the starry greatsword, turning into dregs on the spot. Even more God Slayer, in their fear and despair, did everything they could to avoid the giant swords, but they were still heavily injured. Even those several dozen God King powerhouses also found it hard to withstand the terrifying might of the simultaneous bombardment of 10,000 swords. At least 20 God Kings were injured by the huge swords. Even the first and second protectors were no exception. Among them, 11 God Kings were too heavily injured. They were smashed into dregs by the huge starry sword. Even their godheads were shattered. Under the lead of the 5 patriarchs, the disciples of the 5 clans rushed over while shouting. However, the great star sword had enveloped this area, so they didn't dare to recklessly join the battle. They could only stay in the distance and wait for the sword light to dissipate. After all, those starry swords attacked indiscriminately, regardless of friend or foe. The first round of bombardment from the 90,000 starry swords caused the God Slayer to suffer heavy casualties. Nearly 20,000 of the starry swords had also been destroyed. Starlight burst forth, and a destructive shockwave erupted. But this wasn't the end. The remaining 70,000 starry swords once again interweaved and danced in the air, shuttling back and forth, forming a huge sword net. Whoosh! 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 More than 1,000 soldiers of the God-punishing army who were lucky enough to survive were all heavily injured. Before they could even breathe a sigh of relief, they were once again attacked by more than 70,000 starry swords. It was a tragic sight. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere, and miserable screams rang out. Blood rained down from the sky. As a result, the God Slayer suffered a devastating blow, and their numbers plummeted. Finally, for breaths of time passed. The power of the tens of thousands of starry swords was exhausted and finally dissipated. The scene regained its clarity. When the disciples of the 5 families saw the outcome of the God Slayer clearly, everyone sucked in a cold breath, revealing incomparably shocked expressions. It was only to see that the ruins within a radius of 10,000 miles became a deep pit. Corpses and wreckage were scattered everywhere, as well as fragments of armor and weapons. The God Slayer that still had more than 2,300 people just now was actually reduced to just over 800 people at this time. There were actually 1,500 God Slayer that were one-shot by Ji Tianqing in one move. Even the number of Divine King powerhouses also decreased by 18. Such peerlessly horrifying power was truly world-shaking. The facts prove that it was just as the disciples of the five families guessed. Ji Tianqing alone was comparable to their killing power of several thousand people. In fact, it even surpassed it. The eyes of the five families' patriarchs, elders, and deacons when looking at Ji Tianqing were all filled with awe. Everyone could not resist thinking in their hearts, is this really something that a divine king can accomplish? Is Kenshin just a peak divine king as simple as that? On the surface, Kenshin should be the #1 powerhouse among the divine kings, an existence second only to the five great god emperor. But combined with Kenshin's various performances previously, he created all kinds of miracles. Everyone firmly believed that Kenshin's true strength was already very close to the five great god emperors. Thinking up to here, everyone also had some more confidence in Kenshin's grand revenge plan. Very soon, the five patriarchs all came back to their senses and hurriedly led the disciples under their command to carry out encirclement and annihilation of the remaining God Slayer. The 800 over God Slayer that survived all suffered considerable injuries. Many people were riddled with scars and dripping with blood. Their combat power was also greatly reduced. When the 4,000 over people of the five families rushed up, it was like a monstrous flood, rapidly drowning those God Slayer. The two sides had a difference of 5 times in numbers. Moreover, the God Slayer's injuries were even more tragic. In addition, the disciples of the five families all had the intention of redeeming themselves by meritorious service and showing off in front of Kenshin. They charged especially bravely and with all their might, quite a kind of feeling of charging forward with no regard for their own safety. The result was self-evident. The God Slayer was completely suppressed and beaten to a sorry state, without the slightest ability to resist. The moment the first protector, second protector, and those divine king powerhouses saw that the situation was not right, they turned around and fled without hesitation. But Ji Tianqing's divine sense had long locked onto the divine soul aura of the two protectors. The patriarchs and elders of the five families also kept a close eye on the God Slayer's divine king powerhouses. The two sides began a chase high in the sky and soon engaged in a fierce battle. Ji Tianqing fought 1 against 2. Dealing with the first protector and second protector, he appeared to be handling it with ease. The two sides had only exchanged a few blows when he heavily injured the two protectors until they vomited blood and crashed into the ruins in a wretched state. On the other side, the several dozen divine kings of the five families joined forces to besiege the dozen or so God Slayer. The battle was also abnormally intense. Even if those dozen or so divine kings defended with all their might, fighting as they fled, they were unable to break free from the encirclement of the five families' powerhouses. Just like this battle lasted for 100 breaths of time before it ended very quickly. Chapter 41-32. The result of the battle was as expected. The God Slayer was completely annihilated, including the Great Guardian and the Second Guardian. None of them had a complete corpse, their godheads shattered. After being ravaged by the battle, the rippling secret realm finally returned to normal. The disciples of the five clans cheered in high spirits, celebrating this beautiful victory. At this moment, everyone's tense nerves finally relaxed, and the pressure in their hearts was completely released. The torrential cheers and shouts lasted for dozens of breaths before gradually calming down. Ji Tianqing did not stop the disciples of the five clans from cheering, nor did he have any excited or happy expression. After all, this result was within his expectations. It was completely normal, and there was nothing surprising about it. He only searched the battlefield silently, and picked up more than 40 pieces of God King Expert's Godhead fragments. They were all God King Experts from the God Slayer, and there were a total of 50 of them, but he only picked up 45 pieces. There were also 5 pieces of Godhead fragments. Firstly, they were too weak, and secondly, they were too scattered in the ruins of tens of thousands of miles. As the chief of the rebel alliance, Ji Tianqing could not search everywhere for those pieces of Godhead fragments that were dispensable. If the disciples of the 6 clans saw it, it would affect his prestige more or less. Soon, Ji Tianqing collected the 45 pieces of Godhead fragments, turned around, and flew towards the people of the Nangong clan. The patriarchs and elders of the 5 clans also calmed down, and hurriedly interrupted the cheering disciples, and brought everyone to follow him. The 6 forces of the southern army gathered at the grassland at the edge of the battlefield. Ji Tianqing ordered with a calm expression, each clan, send 20 disciples with lighter injuries to clean up the battlefield, and collect the spoils of war and the remains of the dead. Each clan's patriarchs and elders will stay, and the others will leave to treat their injuries. Receiving the order, everyone said yes in unison, and started to move. 120 disciples of the clans returned to the battlefield to clean up and count. The other 4,000 people were divided into 6 groups, and they all took pills to treat their injuries. In the sky above the grassland, there were only 50 God King experts left. These 50-odd people were the pillars of the 6 families, the trump card of the South Army. Ji Tianqing looked around. Seeing that everyone was silent, he looked at Nangong Buhua and said, "Nangong Buhua, tell us everything in detail." When everyone heard this, they guessed that Ji Tianqing wanted to find out the truth and settle the score with the 5 patriarchs. Thus, the patriarchs and elders of the 5 powers all frowned, feeling uneasy in their hearts. Without hesitation, Nangong Buhua said with a deep and vigorous voice, "4 hours ago, we arrived at the entrance of the wavy secret realm as planned. At that time, this old man remembered the Alliance Master's warning and suggested that the Nangong clan should enter first in case something happened in the wavy wave secret realm. After the Nangong clan had ascertained the situation, the 5 clans would enter first." In just a few dozen breaths, Nangong Buhua recounted everything that had happened in detail. Of course, he was only stating the facts objectively. He did not make any comments about the 5 patriarchs' actions and thoughts. Even the 5 patriarchs and the numerous elders didn't think that he was lying or exaggerating when he told the story in front of everyone. In general, Nangong Buhua's performance was very upright. After Ji Tianqing heard this, he turned to look at the 5 patriarchs and asked in a deep voice, "Do you have any objections to the Vice Alliance Master's report? Or do you have anything to add?" The elders of the various clans remained silent. The 5 patriarchs looked at each other, then at each other, but none of them had the intention to speak. After all, Nangong Buhua was not at fault. There was nothing wrong with his report. After a moment of silence, Jiang Chuyun of the Jiang clan finally stood up and said with a smile, "Lord Alliance Master, we were wrong in this matter. However, the alliance has just been formed." Everyone, Jiang Chuyun lowered his stance and admitted his mistake with a smile. He also defended the 5 clans. What he wanted to say was that the rebel alliance had just been formed. It was understandable that it would be difficult for the various clans to coordinate in a short period of time. However, before he could finish his sentence, he was interrupted by Ji Tianqing. "Don't use those high-sounding reasons in front of me. As for the real reason, everyone is well aware of it." Jiang Chuyun's face turned red. He smiled embarrassedly and retreated. The other 4 patriarchs did not dare to say anything else. They all lowered their heads and admitted their mistakes. Ji Tianqing asked again, "Have you ever thought about why the Southern Army was formed by the 6 clans when I divided the Northern and Southern armies? Why did the 6 of you form the Southern Army?" The 5 patriarchs were stunned when they heard this. They frowned and pondered. To be honest, they had never thought about this question before. However, when they thought about it carefully, a few patriarchs vaguely understood something. Ji Tianqing looked at Nangong Buhua and said, "Nangong Buhua, tell them." Nangong Buhua didn't evade and said calmly, among the 6 clans of the Southern Army, the Nangong clan, the Aries clan, the Lan clan, and the Jiang clan all have old ties with the alliance leader. One could even say that they have a close relationship. Among the 9 clans of the rebel alliance, the alliance leader trusts these few clans the most. Hence, the alliance leader made us the Southern Army. He believed that we would be able to carry out the orders seriously and complete the mission without his supervision. Ji Tianqing nodded and said solemnly, "That's right. But what about you? Have you forgotten the agreement when you joined the alliance? For the sake of some small benefits, you disregarded the big picture. Are you worthy of my trust?" The expressions of the patriarchs and elders of the 5 clans became very unnatural. Their eyes flashed with a thick sense of guilt. Ji Tianqing continued to reprimand them. "You've become arrogant and conceited after successfully subduing more than 10 area masters, right? Do you really think that the anti-rebels alliance is invincible with my support? Don't forget. The number of experts and soldiers under the imperial tutor is several times more than ours. There are also many top factions and ancient clans who are watching a good show. Our strength is still very weak, and we don't have enough confidence to win this war that will change the fate of the boundless heaven continent. Please don't be complacent and don't treat the lives of your disciples as a joke. This time, the imperial tutor sent a god slayer to ambush you. Fortunately, the imperial tutor was careless and allowed you to turn the tables. Even so, if I hadn't arrived in time, you would have sacrificed even more disciples. How many elite disciples do you have in your clans that you can sacrifice and squander?" Ji Tianqing's words made the 5 patriarchs feel ashamed. They could not refute him at all. Chapter 41-33. Everyone was silent. The entire place was silent. Ji Tianqing stopped reprimanding the patriarchs and elders. He paused for a moment and said earnestly, "I've said what I should say. You're all smart people, so I don't want to say anything more. Please remember, I can forgive you this time, but only this time. If something similar happens again and affects the alliance's plan, I'll let you know where the name Kenshin comes from." Where did the name Kenshin come from? Of course, it wasn't because he was kind and benevolent. It was because he gained it through battles and killing. Ji Tianqing spoke tactfully, but the patriarchs and elders all understood what he meant. Everyone was shocked and nodded to show that they understood. "Don't worry, Alliance Master. This will never happen again. After this incident, we've all seen Vice Alliance Master Nangong's character. We also understand why you appointed him as Vice Alliance Master. Don't worry, Alliance Master. We'll obey Vice Alliance Master's orders from now on, just like we obey your orders. We're willing to make up for our mistakes. Alliance Master, please don't be angry. Watch our performance in the future." Fortunately, Alliance Master came like a divine soldier from heaven and resolved this crisis, saving the lives of countless disciples. We won't dare to hope for such a good thing to happen again. The patriarchs sincerely admitted their mistakes and promised Ji Tianqing that the same thing wouldn't happen again. At the same time, the 5 patriarchs witnessed Nangong Buhua's actions and character. They also saw the sacrifice of the Nangong clan. They were touched. Their prejudice against Nangong Buhua was dispelled. Ji Tianqing ended the lecture and said to everyone, "I hope everyone will remember this lesson and won't repeat the same mistake. Alright, those who are seriously injured, go and treat your injuries. Those who aren't seriously injured, follow me to find the Wavy Zone Master." After his reminder, everyone remembered that the thousands of people under the Wavy Zone Master's command hadn't shown up since the beginning of the battle. Someone immediately explained, after the God Slayer came to the Wavy Wave's secret realm, he took control of it by force and imprisoned the Wavy Zone Master's people. When we were fighting, we destroyed the main mansion of the Wavy Domain, but we didn't find any prison or formation. I suppose the prison where the realm of billowing waves is imprisoned is in the depths of this arcane realm. Therefore, Ji Tianqing took a few chiefs and a dozen elders to the depths of the secret realm to find the realm master of the below realm. The other 30 or so elders were more seriously injured, so they stayed behind to recuperate. Ji Tianqing and the others flew across the sky in a grandiose manner. At the same time, they released their divine senses to explore the surroundings. Sure enough, after a quarter of an hour, they arrived at the depths of the secret realm. Ji Tianqing noticed something strange. At the foot of a 1,000-foot tall mountain, there were ripples of divine power tens of thousands of feet deep underground. It seemed like there was a divine array operating there. After careful observation, Ji Tianqing discovered that there was a secret passageway that led to the depths of the earth within the mountain. He casually killed the guards guarding the secret passageway and led everyone through the secret passageway, descending tens of thousands of feet underground. As expected. Deep underground, there was a prison with a radius of tens of thousands of feet. It was sealed by 3 layers of formations. Inside the prison, there were more than a dozen intersecting passageways, which divided into dozens of cells. This prison was built by the realm master of the below realm. It was used to imprison soldiers or criminals who had committed crimes and were punished. Who would have thought that he and the tens of thousands of people under his command would be locked up in prison? There was only one entrance to the prison, which was guarded by 10 high-level divine emperors. These 10 divine emperors were God Slayer brought by the Great Guardian and the Second Guardian. They were ordered to guard this place. These 10 divine emperors and the realm master of the below realm in the prison didn't know what was happening outside. They all waited patiently. Although the prison was designed and built by the realm master of the below realm, he could easily break the formation and escape. The 10 soldiers of the God-punishing army guarding the exit of the prison couldn't stop him. But the realm master of the below realm would never escape. He was thinking about how to please the Great Guardian and the Second Guardian and how to appease the Imperial Tutor so that he wouldn't be punished. Swish, swish, swish. With a flash of sword light, the 10 God Slayer guarding the exit of the prison were easily killed by Ji Tianqing. The group stepped into the dimly lit prison. They stood in the circular hall and looked around at the passageways and cells. The cells were very quiet. The thousands of soldiers under the command of the realm master of the below realm all stayed in the prison obediently. They circulated their energy, adjusted their breathing, and closed their eyes to rest. No one made a fuss. No one struggled or resisted. Everyone knew that they were only imprisoned here temporarily. They wouldn't be hurt or punished. When the God Slayer destroyed the southern army of the Rebel Alliance, they would be able to leave. At this moment, Ji Tianqing entered the prison with a dozen God Kings. Their appearance immediately attracted the attention of thousands of people and alerted them. Many of the soldiers in the prison cells craned their necks to look outside. Many of them revealed happy and expectant expressions. Many of them were even whispering and discussing in private. They're finally here to release us. They've destroyed the southern army of the Rebel Alliance in less than 2 days. After all, they're the elite sent by the Imperial Tutor. Otherwise, they wouldn't be called the God Slayer. Sigh. I don't know how they'll punish the Realm Master. I hope they don't implicate us. At this critical moment, the Imperial Tutor might punish the chicken to warn the monkey. I hope our Realm Master doesn't become that chicken. Obviously, the soldiers under the command of the Realm Master of the Below Realm had never seen the First Guardian and Second Guardian. When they saw Ji Tianqing and a dozen God Kings, they instinctively thought that they were the generals of the God Slayer. These discussions naturally fell into the ears of Ji Tianqing, the various patriarchs, and elders of the various clans. Everyone frowned. A cold light flashed in their eyes. They were somewhat displeased. In the depths of the prison, there was a separate, well-decorated, and comfortable cell. The Realm Master of the Below Realm and a dozen of his family members and trusted generals were resting in this spacious cell. When he heard the commotion outside, the realm master of the Billow Realm, who was resting with his eyes closed, immediately opened his eyes and perked up. He woke up a dozen of his family members and trusted generals. They stood in a line in the cell and maintained a respectful posture. When Ji Tianqing and the others arrived at the door of the cell, he led them to bow in unison. "Greetings, my lords. We know our mistakes. We welcome your triumphant return." The realm master of the Billow Realm and the others bowed as if they had admitted their mistakes and were trying to curry favor with them. However, before he could finish his sentence, Ji Tianqing and the others appeared at the door of the cell. He was stunned. When he saw a dozen unfamiliar faces looking at him expressionlessly, the realm master of the Billow Realm was dumbfounded. He had never seen these people before. Basically, he didn't know any of them. Only a high-level god king and the white-robed young man in the lead felt familiar to him. Chapter 41-34. The ruler of the zone had thought that the God Slayer had destroyed the army of the Southern Army and had come to release him from prison. He had to put on the lowest attitude, sincerely admit his mistake, and try his best to curry favor with the two guardians. Only in this way could the two guardians plead with the imperial tutor for him and reduce or exempt his punishment. After all, he had already thought of an excuse. As long as the two guardians plead for him, there would be no problem. However, he had never expected that the group of people in front of him would be so unfamiliar. Among this group of people, there were two people that he felt familiar with, and he definitely didn't want to see them. He vaguely remembered that he had seen the white-haired old man more than 200 years ago. He seemed to be Lan Wuji, the leader of the Lan family from the prehistoric times. As for the leader of this group of people, he had never seen the handsome young man in a white robe with his own eyes, but he had seen his portrait. If he guessed correctly, he should be the famous Kenshin, a legend from 1,000 years ago. The ruler of the zone was dumbfounded. He stared blankly at Ji Tianqing and the others and froze on the spot. He had never expected that it was not the God Slayer who had come, but the Rebel Alliance. What was more frightening was that even the Kenshin had appeared. That's not right. Isn't the Kenshin leading the army of the Northern Army of the Rebel Alliance in various regions in the north? He is so far away from the wavy domain. How could he appear here? The ruler of the zone couldn't help but have this question in his mind. However, now was not the time to think about it. Under the watchful eyes of so many people, he had to resolve the awkwardness and find a way to salvage the situation. Therefore, after a short moment of astonishment, he immediately concealed his true thoughts and emotions. He smiled sincerely and looked at Ji Tianqing and the others with excitement. He said sincerely, "Leaders, I've been waiting for you for so long. That's great, we're finally saved." At this point, the domain master of the Wavy Sea domain cheered as if she had just survived a disaster. His family members and trusted generals behind him, however, were not as shrewd as him. They were all in a state of confusion. Everyone looked at Ji Tianqing and the others suspiciously, wondering who these people were. What was going on with the domain leader? Wasn't it the God Slayer who imprisoned us? Why did he call the other party the Patriarch, and even say that we were saved? What was going on? Why can't I understand? At this moment, the Surging Wave Zone Master explained with great emotion, "I've been waiting for your arrival for the past few days. I even asked my subordinates to prepare a banquet to entertain you. I was just waiting for you to arrive, and I'll recite the oath and join the Rebel Alliance to help you achieve great things." Who would have thought that the God Slayer would sneak in, capture me and my soldiers, and imprison us here? In order to preserve my strength and not let my soldiers sacrifice their lives in vain, I could only endure the humiliation. Because I believe that the Patriarchs will definitely arrive on time, defeat the God Slayer, and save us. As it turns out, the Southern Army didn't disappoint me. What surprised me even more was that not only did the Patriarchs and Elders come to save me, but even the Honorable Lord Kenshin came. As he spoke, the ruler of the zone stared at Ji Tianqing with bright eyes and said excitedly, "You must be Lord Kenshin, right? You're indeed more outstanding than the rumors, and I admire you. I've heard countless legends about Lord Kenshin, but I didn't expect to see you with my own eyes one day. I'm so lucky that I can die without regrets." After that, the ruler of the zone bowed deeply to Ji Tianqing in front of everyone. Through this series of actions, the ruler of the zone successfully eased the awkwardness and pointed out the identities of Ji Tianqing and the others. His family members and trusted generals behind him were suddenly enlightened and knew the result. It turned out that it was not the God Slayer who had come to release them, but the Southern Army of the Rebel Alliance and Kenshin. Since the Southern Army had arrived and the Sword God had also appeared, the result was self-evident. The Southern Army must have won, and the God Slayer had been defeated. Although this result was very shocking and unbelievable, it was the truth. The ruler of the zone's family members and trusted generals were not stupid, and they all knew what to do. They all imitated the ruler of the zone and put on a grateful and respectful attitude. Even the several hundred soldiers in the nearby prison cells knew the truth and saw the scene that had taken place here. They all transmitted their voices to the others, reminding their companions not to expose themselves. Therefore, in a short while, the thousands of soldiers in the prison cells all knew that the God Slayer had been defeated, and that the Kenshin and the Southern Army had won. Such news was more shocking than the previous one, and it made the people in the prison cells cry out in surprise. Ji Tianqing, the patriarchs, and the dozen or so elders saw all of this clearly. However, they pretended not to see the ruler of the zone's panic and pretense, and they were all expressionless. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and sent out several beams of divine light, which easily broke the array on the door of the prison cell. Two of the ruler's most trusted generals hurriedly opened the door of the prison cell. The ruler of the zone led his family members and trusted generals to thank Ji Tianqing and the others again. Ji Tianqing exchanged a few pleasantries with him, and his attitude was calm and cold. After exchanging pleasantries, he instructed, "This prison was built by you, so you should be able to open the cells and release your subordinates. I'll wait for you outside. You have 7 minutes." After that, Ji Tianqing turned and left with the patriarchs and elders. They left the underground prison and waited at the peak of the 1,000-foot-high mountain. Before the ruler of the zone arrived, the patriarchs all told Ji Tianqing, "Lord Alliance Master, the ruler of the zone has obviously surrendered to the God Slayer. He thought that the God Slayer had destroyed us, so we should release him. He didn't expect that we would be the ones to rescue him. This guy is two-faced and can't be trusted. Lord Alliance Master, the ruler of the zone has no integrity or integrity. Please don't let him hold such an important position." This old man also agrees. "I hope that the Alliance Master can change the domain lord. This kind of person is fickle and fickle. We can't entrust him with important tasks." Obviously, the patriarchs had a very bad impression of the ruler of the zone and hoped that Ji Tianqing could replace him with someone else. However, Ji Tianqing only smiled and said indifferently, "Where can we find a suitable person to replace the ruler of the zone in such a hurry? Besides, all the subordinates of the ruler of the zone are unharmed. If we change the ruler, we'll have to change at least thousands of generals and officials. As for the ruler of the zone's loyalty, we just need him to swear the oath of surrender. A fickle person like him must be very afraid of death. Since he's a smart person, he knows what to do. You don't need to worry." Chapter 41-35. Since Ji Tianqing had made the decision, the clan leaders did not discuss it further. Besides, what he said made sense. Most importantly, everyone had recited and heard the oath of surrender many times. The oath was thousands of words long and contained dozens of details and oaths. Just thinking about it made their scalp tingle. After reciting the oath, they would feel the power of the heavenly path and be monitored by the heavens. No matter who it was, as long as they did not want to be blasted into smithereens by the heavenly punishment, they would not dare to violate the oath. Thinking of this, the clan leaders and elders did not have any objections. Ji Tianqing gave the domain master half an hour. However, the domain master of the Billow Zone would never use it to open the cells. He would leave it to his trusted subordinates to do that. When Ji Tianqing and the others left, the domain master frowned deeply. His respectful and humble attitude instantly disappeared. Phew, he let out a long sigh of relief and felt lucky in his heart. He was extremely glad that he had reacted quickly enough. He knew that his acting skills were not good enough and Ji Tianqing and the others would have seen through him. However, he was already thankful that he could smooth things over and not be exposed by Ji Tianqing in public. Many family members, trusted generals gathered around and discussed in low voices. That scared me. How did this happen? Fortunately, the domain master reacted quickly. Otherwise, we would have been exposed. It's incredible. The Rebel Alliance's Southern Army defeated the God Slayer. Kenshin came in person. Isn't it natural that the God Slayer was defeated? It's a pity that we can't go out and see the situation. Otherwise, we would know what happened. Don't think too much. The Southern Army has won. We have to find a way to deal with it. No matter what, facing the Kenshin is better than facing the Imperial Tutor, right? Everyone, stop talking. Let's see what the domain master has to say. After discussing for a while, they all looked at the domain master of the Wavy Wave Zone. The domain master said with a dark face, Kenshin gave me half an hour, but I can't delay for that long. Go and open all the cells and release the soldiers. Remember to tell them not to spout nonsense. Several generals nodded to show that they understood. Someone else asked, Region Leader, how will you explain this to Kenshin? The domain master sneered. What's there to explain? With the wisdom of Kenshin and those old foxes, they've already seen through us. Everyone was well aware of this, so it would be pointless to explain further. I'll just surrender in front of the Kenshin and give them enough face. I don't believe they can kill me, right? After he finished speaking, he left the prison with his 2 trusted generals. Only his family and trusted generals were left. Looking at his back, they were uneasy and worried. Ji Tianqing waited for only 100 breaths of time before the domain master arrived at the peak of the mountain. Greetings, Lord Kenshin. The domain master of the Wavy Sea region bowed respectfully. Before Ji Tianqing could say anything, he said, I know that Lord Alliance leader and all the clan leaders are very busy and don't have much time left. So, I won't waste any more of your time. I wanted to surrender a long time ago, but this accident happened because of God Slayer's interference. Now that things are back to normal, I'll formally surrender to the Rebel Alliance and pledge my loyalty to Lord Kenshin. With that, he bowed deeply and extended his hands to Ji Tianqing. In order to protect his own safety and his position as the region leader, he didn't hesitate to lower his pride and dignity. Since the domain master of the Wavy Sea region was so tactful, what else could the clan leaders and elders say? Ji Tianqing nodded slightly, took out a jade slip, and handed it to the domain master of the Wavy Sea region. The domain master of the Wavy Sea region took the jade slip respectfully and began to read the pledge of surrender with great emotion. Before this, he had heard that the Rebel Alliance's pledge of surrender was very strange, complicated, and terrifying. However, after experiencing it for himself, he realized how detailed and terrifying the pledge was. As he read the pledge one after another, beads of sweat appeared on his forehead, and his face became more and more solemn. He even sensed the power of the way of heaven. His body lit up with hazy divine light, and a trace of Taoist rhyme vaguely appeared above his head. At last, when he finished reading the pledge of surrender, his whole body shone with golden light, and the trace of Taoist rhyme hovered above his head. Dazzling lightning flashed high in the sky, and earth-shattering thunder rumbled. The domain master of the Wavy Sea region clearly sensed the power of the way of heaven, and he was even more frightened. At the same time, he also knew that this pledge was recognized and supervised by the way of heaven. He had no doubt that if he dared to violate the pledge, he would be punished by the heavens. After a while, the vision of heaven and earth and the sound of thunder gradually dissipated. Ji Tianqing took back the jade slip, looked at the domain master of the Wavy Sea region with a dignified expression, and said in a low voice, "I can let bygones be bygones. I accept your surrender and allow you to continue to rule the Wavy Sea region. But you have to do it as soon as possible, remove the restrictions on all the people, and restore their freedom. I don't have any other tasks for now, and I'll send you a message if there's anything. You're a smart person, and you should know what to do, right?" The domain master of the Wavy Sea region nodded quickly and said with a smile, "Alliance master, please rest assured. I know what to do, and I won't let you down." Ji Tianqing didn't say anything else and left with the other patriarchs and elders. Soon, he left the Wavy Sea region with thousands of soldiers from the Southern Army. The Wavy Sea region was full of holes from the war, but it could be repaired quickly as time passed. The domain master's manor was also in ruins, but the soldiers under the domain master of the Wavy Sea region could spend some time to rebuild it. In short, the matter of the Wavy Sea region had been resolved. The Southern Army would find a place to recuperate for a while, and then they would head to the next region to conquer other domain masters. Of course, after the setback in the Wavy Sea region, Nangong Buhua and the other clan leaders would learn from their mistakes and not make the same mistake again. Ji Tianqing was also going to return to the north, and lead the Northern Army to conquer more regions. Before parting ways with the Southern Army, he gave the clan leaders some instructions, and also told Nangong Buhua some things. After that, he left on the god-slaying battleship under everyone's gaze. Bai Long followed Ji Tianqing all the way to the Wavy Sea region this time. He didn't participate in the decision-making, and he didn't express any opinions. He just watched in silence. On the way back to the north, the master and disciple sat in the cockpit of the battleship. Bai Long steered the battleship, and Ji Tianqing closed his eyes to rest. Suddenly, he asked, "Did you learn anything from this trip?" Bai Long naturally understood that his master wanted to train him by asking him to watch the whole process. Therefore, he answered naturally, "What I saw was that master looked at the big picture and tolerated the small interludes for the time being, so that he could achieve the greatest results with the least effort. After all, we're at the beginning stage of expanding our territory, and it's better to be bold and decisive than to be meticulous." Book House Reading Website. Chapter 41-36. Actually, White Dragon's comprehension had always been high. Back then, he had learned a lot from Kenshin. Not only did he learn the experience and tricks of Sword Dao and Divine Dao, but also his character and strategy. But in this life, he realized that his master was different from his previous life. Back then, Kenshin was cold, arrogant, and domineering, but he was not good at strategy or guessing people's minds. In this life, his master had obviously changed these shortcomings. When it was time to be domineering, he would not be lenient. When it was time to use strategy, he would not be careless. His guesses and control of people's minds were also very accurate. The White Dragon also learned more things under the influence of the imperceptible influence. For example, this time, when he was watching the whole process, he would silently analyze everyone's thoughts and goals. As a quiet bystander, he could naturally see more clearly. Ji Tianqing nodded and expressed his appreciation for White Dragon's analysis. "You're right. When opening up new territory, you have to be bold and decisive. You have to cut the Gordian knot and control the overall situation as soon as possible. If you stick to the details and small things, it will affect the pace and rhythm of the attack. But when guarding the territory and governing the world, you have to be careful and pay attention to everything, no matter how big or small. When it comes to using people, you have to follow this principle as much as possible. Some people were only suitable for fighting on the battlefield, making big moves and achieving great achievements. And some people are more suitable for guarding the territory and governing the world. White Dragon completely agreed and kept it in mind. He smiled and said, "Master, based on my observation, Nangong Buhua should be the one who doesn't expand enough and is suitable for governing the world." "That's right." Ji Tianqing nodded in agreement and said no more. Then, White Dragon focused on driving the warship to the north. Ji Tianqing returned to the distorted spacetime of Jiutian 10 Absolute's tower to cultivate in seclusion. Previously, he still had more than 40 Godhead fragments to refine. This time, in the wavy secret realm, he obtained another 40. He estimated that after refining these 90 Godhead fragments, his strength would increase by a lot. After returning to the distorted spacetime, Ji Tianqing sat cross-legged under the bloody flame sacred tree. He took out many Godhead fragments and quickly entered a state of cultivation. At the same time, news about the God Slayer in the wavy wave secret realm began to spread. There were two sources of information. The first was leaked by the subordinates of the wavy wave domain's domain lord. As for the other portion, it was information deliberately released by the Shimi Paradise, a subordinate of the Rebel Alliance. The reason why this news was released was to strengthen the reputation of the Rebel Alliance and let the people of the entire boundless heaven continent know that the Rebel Alliance was invincible. And Kenshin's elusiveness and omnipresence. In addition, it was also to severely damage the morale of the Imperial Tudor faction and let the Rebel Alliance suppress the Imperial Tudor faction. Ever since Ji Tianqing established the Rebel Alliance, he had already made these plans. Shimi Grotto Heaven was in charge of gathering intelligence and information, as well as planning propaganda and public opinion attacks. The battle between the Rebel Alliance and the Imperial Tudor faction was not as simple as a battle of blood. Of course, it also included a battle of public opinion. It was precisely because of Shimi Grotto Heaven's plan that the Rebel Alliance won the reputation of being the savior of the world and the love and support of hundreds of millions of people. After the news was released, it spread to all parts of the boundless heaven continent in just one day. 2 days later, almost all the top forces, empires, and God-King powerhouses in the region received this news. Only then did the people of the world know that the Imperial Tutor, who seemed to be biding his time and guarding the Dark Night domain, had secretly sent an elite God Slayer to the Wavy Wave domain to destroy the Southern Army. Originally, the Imperial Tutor's plan had already succeeded. The God Slayer had successfully ambushed thousands of Southern Army in the Wavy Wave secret realm, and the two sides had engaged in an intense battle. However, the Imperial Tutor had underestimated the strength of the Southern Army. The God Slayer had struck first, but it was unable to destroy the Southern Army. It had even fallen into a dilemma. Then, the most unlikely person to appear, Kenshin, suddenly appeared in the Wavy Wave secret realm, like a divine soldier descending from the heavens. Kenshin destroyed thousands of God Slayer with just a wave of his hand. Then, the Southern Army completely destroyed the God Slayer and conquered the Wavy Wave domain. Such a story full of twists and turns and ups and downs made everyone who heard the news feel incomparably shocked and excited. The people of the boundless heaven continent had not heard of such a thrilling battle for thousands of years. And the protagonists of this wonderful battle were Kenshin and the Imperial Tutor faction. It was even more exciting. For a time, all the regions, empires, and hundreds of billions of people in the boundless heaven continent were discussing this matter. In the streets and alleys, people could be seen in groups of 3 to 5, describing the process of the battle with great emotion. The bystanders would also let out excited cheers. For the next 10 days, this matter was repeatedly transmitted and spread, gradually becoming known to everyone. Most of the people had never seen Kenshin, nor did they know those God Slayer. But this did not stop them from worshipping Kenshin, cheering for the Rebel Alliance, and applauding the destruction of those God Slayer. The people of more regions were looking forward to the rebel alliance's arrival as soon as possible, conquering their regions, and restoring their freedom. Although they could not use actual actions to support the rebel alliance and Kenshin. But they could use their faith to support and encourage the rebel alliance. When the people heard this news, this was their reaction. They were overjoyed and looked forward to it. However, the leaders of the various regions, the leaders of the top forces, and the ancient clans who were watching from the sidelines had a different feeling. While they were shocked and incredulous, they also felt deeply afraid and worried. Judging from the current situation, the rebel alliance was invincible. Its momentum was established, and it also had extremely high prestige among the people and the support of the people. Meanwhile, the Imperial Tutors faction suffered consecutive defeats and lost several top powerhouses. The situation was not optimistic, and the situation was becoming more and more urgent. Many of the region leaders were considering whether it was time to make a choice. Many of the top forces and ancient clans also began to hesitate and weigh the pros and cons. Should they continue to maintain a wait-and-see attitude, or should they side with the rebel alliance? Judging from the current situation, the rebel alliance, commanded and led by Kenshin, was already unstoppable. Like the autumn wind sweeping away fallen leaves, the Imperial Tutor could not resist at all. In less than a year, the Kenshin would be able to sweep across the entire boundless heaven continent and surround the Anya domain. Although everyone understood that siding with the Kenshin at this time was not a timely help, at most it was icing on the cake. Not only would they not be able to gain the Kenshin's trust and favor, but they would also not be able to reap many benefits. But most importantly, they could at least stand on the right side and protect their own forces and foundations. If they did not join the rebel alliance, what would they do when the Kenshin unified the boundless heaven continent in the future? At that time, they would have no other choice but to give up their foundations and flee the boundless heaven continent. Chapter 41-37. Everyone in the boundless heaven continent was talking about the destruction of the God Slayer. While they marveled at Kenshin's divine foresight, unpredictability, and power, they couldn't help but wonder how the Imperial Tutor would react. Not only did the carefully planned plan and the chosen God Slayer fail to destroy the Southern Army, but it was also completely wiped out. Not only did this embarrass the Imperial Tutor, but it also caused the loss of many powerhouses, further weakening the Imperial Tutor's power. Presumably, the Imperial Tutor must be so furious that he vomited blood, right? Not only did the people think so, but even the tens of thousands of soldiers and hundreds of Divine King powerhouses in the Dark Knight region also thought so. The guards and maids in the Azura Divine Palace were especially cautious these days. They didn't even dare to breathe loudly for fear of offending the Imperial Tutor. But in reality, the Imperial Tutor, who was resting in the study with his eyes closed, wasn't as angry as everyone thought. Instead, he appeared calm and collected. 9 days ago, when he first learned of this news, he was indeed very angry. He roared and cursed a few times. But he was a peak Divine King and a strategist with outstanding wisdom. He was best at controlling his emotions, keeping calm, and thinking. In just a short 100 breaths, he regained his calm and collected. The annihilation of the God Slayer had made him disappointed and angry. But he knew that these emotions were useless. What he needed to do was to reflect on himself and speculate about the Rebel Alliance's next move. Then, he could come up with a more perfect plan. For 9 consecutive days, he stayed in the study, repeatedly studying various maps, intelligence, and clues. He came up with many plans and schemes, but after careful deduction, he felt that they were not precise and perfect enough. So, he didn't make up his mind to implement them. It couldn't be helped. Facing a powerhouse like Kenshin really made him despair. The Sword God's invincible strength, his ability to predict the future, his elusive tracks, and his traveling speed made the Imperial Preceptor feel incomparable fear. In these 9 days, the Imperial Tutor really racked his brains and was deeply worried. In the end, he was forced to activate the altar array again and try to contact the Azura God Emperor. He reported the course of events and the current situation to the Azura God Emperor. And the Azura God Emperor, after pondering for a long time, actually gave a reply. An answer that the imperial tutor didn't dare to imagine and even felt that it was unbelievable. When the imperial tutor asked again and confirmed the answer, he was so excited that he almost cheered. After the communication between the two sides ended, the imperial preceptor returned to the study room. He was full of energy and confidence. His previous worries were all swept away. He had regained his usual majesty and seemed to be confident and unfathomable. The generals and guards under his command were all curious and asked him indirectly if there was any good news. However, the imperial preceptor kept his mouth shut and didn't say anything. He seemed very mysterious. The generals and guards were even more curious, but due to military rules and regulations, they didn't dare to make wild guesses and discuss. They could only bury their thoughts in their hearts. 10 days had passed. The deity-slaying warship returned to the north of Yenshu Grotto Heaven and met up with the army on the north. Ji Tianqing cultivated in seclusion in the distorted spacetime for 500 days and refined 90 pieces of the shards of divinity. Just as he expected, after refining these shards of divinity, his strength doubled again. He also took 80 divine Tao precepts from these shards of divinity. Now, the number of precepts he mastered had reached 1,380. On the way to the next region, the people of the three forces entered the deity-slaying warship. The white dragon still steered the warship. Ji Tianqing cultivated in the distorted spacetime for a while to stabilize his foundation of the divine Tao. On the 12th day, the deity-slaying warship entered the next region. At this moment, a communication jade slip flew into the warship. The white dragon took a look and knew that it was a message from Nangong Buhua. He guessed that it was something urgent and woke Ji Tianqing up with a telepathic message. Ji Tianqing left the Jiutian Shiju Tower and appeared in the control room. He picked up the communication jade slip. Before reading the message in the jade slip, he had a rough idea of what it was. After he read the message, his guess was immediately verified. A playful smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Just as he had expected, Nangong Buhua's message reported something to him. Over the past few days, a few more top forces and ancient clans had expressed their intention to join the Anti-Rebellions Alliance, earnestly requesting to join the Anti-Rebellions Alliance. These guys who sail with the wind, they don't care about their face and dignity in order to protect their forces and foundations. Ji Tianqing held the communication jade slip and murmured with a chuckle. The white dragon also showed a mocking smile and asked, "Master, did the news of you destroying the God Slayer spread throughout the boundless heaven continent?" Those fence-sitters couldn't sit still when they heard the news. Ji Tianqing nodded with a smile. The white dragon curled his lips and commented, "Even if they know that joining the rebel alliance at this time is impossible to gain Master's trust and high regard, they still choose to join. That's because they see that we are invincible and that Master is invincible. The Imperial Tutor's faction has suffered heavy losses and was unable to resist. These fence-sitters don't want to make contributions or divide the world. They only want to protect their foundations, so they can only hurry to join. Alas, these guys who aren't willing to take risks and invest, how can they achieve great things?" He didn't ask Ji Tianqing if he would accept those forces. Because he knew that the answer was very clear. His master would definitely accept it. For the sake of the big picture. In order to control the boundless heaven continent and completely overthrow the rule of the Azura God Emperor. But it was only limited to accepting. His master would never trust and regard those forces highly, let alone give them generous treatment. After thinking for a moment, the white dragon asked the most crucial question. "Master, after you accepted the allegiance of these forces and clans, you just let them be? After you killed the Meng Shuai, didn't a few forces also come to join you? Don't you plan to find something for these forces to do?" You can't let them do nothing and just sit back and enjoy the fruits of your labor, right? In the White Dragon's view, even if these new forces didn't get any treatment or rewards, they would still join the rebel alliance. But if they joined the anti-rebels alliance, the greatest benefit and preferential treatment would be that they would be able to preserve their foundation for generations to come. Therefore, he used the words, sit back and enjoy the fruits of others' labor. Ji Tianqing glanced at the White Dragon and said with a smile, you've asked the right question. Yes, I've had this idea for a long time to let them do something. It's just that there were only 5 forces that joined before, so it was difficult for them to achieve great things. Now, with these 5 forces, there are 10 forces. It's time to use them to do something. The White Dragon's eyes lit up and he asked expectantly, Master, what tasks do you plan to arrange for them? Chapter 41-38. Bai Long knew that his master would not arrange for the 10 factions to form an army to conquer the various regions. First of all, they couldn't find someone they could trust to take on the responsibility of leading those 10 forces. Secondly, the loyalty of the 10 factions was not guaranteed, so he could not trust them too much. Moreover, the 10 factions had only said that they wanted to submit, but they had not yet sworn their surrender. This made Bai Long even more confused. How would his master arrange for the 10 factions? Ji Tianqing smiled and said slowly, the most important thing now is to gather the leaders of the 10 factions and have them swear their surrender. Only with the binding of the oath can they carry out my orders. Bai Long nodded in agreement. After thinking for a while, he said, Master, the 10 factions are scattered all over the continent and are rather far from each other. The disciple estimated that it would take about half a month to gather all of them. According to our schedule, we should enter the Acehan region in half a month. Why don't we have them gather there? Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and smiled with praise, yes, your analysis is correct. It is exactly what I want. I will send a message to Nangong Buhua and have him inform the 10 factions. However, I am afraid that we will have to treat them differently this time. Not only will the faction leaders and clan leaders of the 10 factions have to come, but the vice-faction leaders and clan leaders will also have to be present. Bai Long's eyes lit up, Master, you mean to have their faction leaders, vice-faction leaders, and clan leaders all swear their surrender? This way, we can prevent some faction leaders and clan leaders from being unable to convince the masses and have their power seized by their subordinates. Ji Tianqing nodded, yes. This kind of thing is not rare. It is better to be cautious when dealing with these factions that have no integrity and integrity. With that, he took out a communication jade slip and sent a message to Nangong Buhua. All this time, the various factions had been unable to contact Ji Tianqing and could not send him a message. Therefore, they could only contact Nangong Buhua and have him pass on the message. Only the factions that had joined the rebel alliance could directly contact Ji Tianqing. Soon, Ji Tianqing sent out a message. Given Nangong Buhua's personality, he would definitely inform the 10 forces of his decision as soon as possible. Seeing that his master was about to enter the distorted spacetime of the Divine Pagoda to continue cultivating in seclusion, in the end, Bai Long couldn't suppress the doubts in his heart and asked, Master, you still haven't told me what you're going to arrange for those 10 forces to do. Ji Tianqing revealed a meaningful smile and said, even if those 10 powers surrender, they can't form an army to fight. However, it shouldn't be a problem for them to run errands and send messages. If they can't even do something like this, then they are worthless. Bai Long was stunned for a moment. After thinking for a while, he understood what his master meant. He immediately smiled and nodded. Good idea. Not only can they do what they can, but it can also save us time and speed up our progress. A smart person would understand with just a hint, and there would be no need for additional explanations. In the next half a month, the boundless heaven continent was still in a whirlpool. Hundreds of billions of people were still talking about Ji Tianqing killing the Great Guardian and Second Guardian, and destroying the God Slayer. During this period, the rebel alliance's 2 armies in the north and south conquered another 6 regions in succession. The masters of those 6 regions had long been mentally prepared. Even the imperial tutor was no match for the rebel alliance and was beaten to a pulp. They didn't even have the thought of resisting. In order to save their lives and preserve their eternal foundation, they had long gathered their forces. When the rebel alliance's army arrived, they simply surrendered and recited the oath of surrender. In this way, both sides didn't have to clash and also saved each other's time. Everyone was happy. From the looks of it, the rebel alliance sweeping through the entire boundless heaven continent was already the trend. Unless dozens of masters banded together to resist, no one could stop the trend. If there was any resistance, they would definitely be crushed by the surging torrent. On the morning of the 16th day, the god-slaying warship arrived at the summit of the Wormwood Mountain region's heavenly Wormwood Mountain. This place was designated by Ji Tianqing, the place where the leaders of the 10 factions were to gather. When the god-slaying warship descended on the summit of the 30,000 feet tall mountain, dozens of divine king powerhouses had long gathered on the vast mountain summit. Roughly 50 over people were divided into 10 groups, standing on the mountain summit and waiting patiently. These 10 groups of divine king powerhouses, the most had 6 people, and the least also had 2 people. Just as Ji Tianqing requested, the various factions' leaders and deputy leaders all came. Several factions, in order to express their sincerity, not only did the leaders and deputy leaders come, they even brought several guardians and elders under their factions. All in all, these factions behaved extremely respectfully and obediently. When Ji Tianqing put away the god-slaying warship and appeared in the sky with the white dragon, the powerhouses of the 10 factions all bowed and saluted. "We pay respects to Lord Kenshin." Everyone shouted in unison, their expressions and eyes all revealing respect, worship, and reverence. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and waved his hand at the crowd. After a simple exchange of pleasantries and greetings, Ji Tianqing went straight to the point and said with a dignified expression, "Everyone knows why we are gathered here today, so I won't waste everyone's time. Which faction wants to go first?" After saying that, he took out a jade slip and waved it into the air. It floated in the middle of the dozens of divine king powerhouses. The dozens of people from the 10 factions were divided into 2 rows, left and right. The jade slip floated in the middle, equally far away from everyone. Although the 10 factions had the intention to side with the rebel alliance, they were already mentally prepared. But at this juncture, everyone was still somewhat hesitant. A few factions were observing the others' reactions. They were all wondering if someone would take the lead and stand up to ask for some treatment from Kenshin or discuss some conditions. If someone took the lead and they followed suit, there should be a chance. Unexpectedly, just as everyone was secretly guessing, the Dugu clan's leader, Dugu Zhan, stepped out of the crowd first. "Let me do it." Dugu Zhan, who was more than 10 feet tall, had a strong and muscular body. His face was resolute and dignified, and he was emitting a fierce aura. He did not care about the strange looks that everyone was giving him. He stood up and took the jade slip and began to recite the pledge of surrender. Throughout the entire process, he was very decisive and did not hesitate at all. On the other hand, there were 6 people from the Dugu clan. Other than the leader and deputy leader, there were 2 guardians and 2 elders. The 6 of them were at LV8 and LV9 Divine King Realm, and they could be considered as the strongest powerhouses in the Dugu clan. Ji Tianqing noticed that when Dugu Zhan was the first to step out and recite the oath of surrender, the vice patriarch, protector, and elder all looked very calm and did not show any abnormal reaction. Obviously, they agreed with Dugu Zhan's method. Or perhaps, they had already discussed it beforehand. But no matter what, the Dugu clan had made a good start, which made Ji Tianqing feel gratified. Chapter 4139. Dugu Zhan had the trait of being swift and decisive. Ji Tianqing had only observed him for a quarter of an hour before coming to this conclusion. After all, when this fellow was reciting the oath of surrender, even in the face of such a detailed and terrifying oath, he didn't pause even once. In less than a quarter of an hour, Dugu Zhan had finished reciting the oath of surrender. Then, he returned to the group and handed the jade slip to the deputy patriarch. The deputy patriarch held the jade slip and frowned. A trace of shame and resistance flashed across his eyes. In the past, he had only heard that the oath of surrender made by Kenshin was so complicated, detailed, and terrifying. Now that he had seen it with his own eyes, he knew that the rumors were true. But now that things had come to this, he couldn't go back on his words or resist. He could only brace himself and recite the oath of surrender. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing knew what was going on. With Dugu Zhan's straightforward and decisive character, the Dugu clan had still waited for a month or two before making the decision to surrender. It was obvious that the deputy patriarch, protector, and elder had to have interfered with Dugu Zhan's decision to a certain extent, resulting in this outcome. The other 9 factions' leaders, elders, and protectors all had ugly expressions after hearing Dugu Zhan recite the oath of surrender. They were very unnatural. If not for the presence of Kenshin, and because of Kenshin's powerful strength and prestige, the experts of the 9 factions would have turned and left long ago. But in the current situation, it was obviously impossible. Therefore, after the deputy patriarch finished reciting the oath of surrender, the Wanyan clan's patriarch took the initiative to take the jade slip and began to recite the oath of surrender. What was interesting was that when the Wanyan clan's patriarch took the jade slip, the patriarchs and patriarchs of the other 2 factions also wanted to make a move at the same time. But they were further away from the deputy patriarch, while the Wanyan clan's patriarch was closer. Therefore, the Wanyan clan's patriarch snatched the jade slip. That's right, snatched it. At the beginning, the various factions still had the intention of watching. But after the Dugu clan's patriarch took the lead, everyone keenly observed that Ji Tianqing was paying attention to Dugu Zhan and seriously sizing him up for a long time. This detail made the patriarchs and patriarchs' hearts skip a beat, and they immediately guessed a certain possibility. They were all smart people, so they naturally thought of the same thing. With the 10 of us surrendering together, the Kenshin will most likely form an army with us to carry out missions. Since it was an army, there had to be a leader to lead everyone. Dugu Zhan looked honest, but he was actually very meticulous. He was the first to stand out and support Kenshin, so it was easy for him to gain Kenshin's favor, and he was likely to become the leader of this team. This won't do. We can't let the Dugu clan steal the limelight. Even if I can't snatch the position of leader, I have to leave a good impression on the Kenshin. It was with such thoughts that the patriarchs and sect masters of the various forces made a move at the same time, wanting to take the jade slip. In the end, clan leader Wanyan beat him to it. In fact, the situation was just as everyone expected. Ji Tianqing also carefully observed the Wanyan clan leader. The various patriarchs and sect masters were all shrewd people. When they saw this detail, they knew something was wrong. However, the opportunity had already been missed. No matter how much he regretted, it was useless. Soon, the Wanyan clan leader finished reciting the oath of surrender, and it was the deputy clan leader's turn. After the Wanyan clan surrendered, the remaining patriarchs and sects also took the jade slips and recited the oath of surrender. This time, Ji Tianqing only briefly sized up the patriarchs and sect masters of the various forces. He didn't observe them in detail. Half an hour later, the 10 forces had all surrendered, and the oath of the heavenly Tao had taken effect. The divine light that lingered around everyone's body, the Taoist rhymes that appeared above their heads, and the lightning in the sky all made the patriarchs feel pressured and awed. They had never seen it with their own eyes before. They had only heard that the oath of surrender was terrifying. They had always felt that the oath was witnessed by the heavenly Tao, and that even the heavenly Tao was helping Kenshin. It was simply an exaggeration. But now, after experiencing it for themselves, they knew that the rumors were true and felt the terror of the heavenly Tao. After the 10 forces had all surrendered, Ji Tianqing put away the jade slip. He looked around and said in a solemn tone, "You have all joined the rebel alliance. You must always remember the contents of the alliance agreement and carry it out by example. If anyone violates the alliance agreement, don't blame me for severely punishing them." The patriarchs and sect masters of the 10 forces hurriedly nodded in agreement, indicating that they would do as they were told and wouldn't dare to go against Kenshin's will. Ji Tianqing nodded in satisfaction and began to announce the plan and mission. "Since you are already a part of the rebel alliance, you have to do your part at this critical juncture to save the people. I now announce that I have a special mission for you to carry out." Hearing this, the patriarchs of the 10 forces were a little surprised. At the same time, they were also a little expectant and nervous. They were surprised because they had just joined the rebel alliance, and Kenshin trusted them so much that he couldn't wait to assign them a mission. What kind of mission would Kenshin assign them to carry out? They were really looking forward to it. They couldn't be formed into an army to attack the various regions and deal with the imperial tutor's army, right? Or even use them as cannon fodder to send them to their deaths. This was the reason why everyone was nervous. Under everyone's nervous gaze, Ji Tianqing said, "As everyone knows, the rebel alliance has won every battle since its establishment without a single defeat. Not only did we defeat the imperial tutor, but we also won the praise and support of the people." After a few months of observation, the territorial lords of the various regions of the boundless heaven continent also made their choice. Only a portion of the territorial lords and forces chose to rely on the imperial tutor and remain stubborn. Most of the territorial lords and forces either remained neutral and watched, or had the intention of surrendering to the rebel alliance. The alliance's 2 armies in the north and south have split up and moved to conquer the various regions. This is already very fast. However, this is still not efficient enough. Therefore, I've decided that you will represent the rebel alliance to convey the message to the various regions and persuade the territorial lords to surrender. When they heard this, the godly kings of the 10 forces basically understood Ji Tianqing's meaning. It was nothing more than for them to represent the rebel alliance and persuade the various territorial lords to surrender. In any case, many of the territorial lords were in a wait-and-see state, or had the intention of surrendering to the rebel alliance long ago. They only needed to convey the message, and they would basically be able to conquer them smoothly. Of course, if any of the territorial lords couldn't figure it out and insisted on fighting to the death, then they would have to deal a heavy blow. All in all, this mission still carried a certain amount of risk. At this moment, they heard Ji Tianqing announce the results in a dignified tone. He said, "The Dugu clan, the Xiong clan, the Li clan, the Zhuqiu clan, and the Wanyan zone will form a team, led by the Dugu clan and commanded by Dugu Zhan. The Wanyan clan, the Ming clan, the 1,000 military hall will form a team, led by the Wanyan clan and commanded by the Wanyan clan leader." Chapter 4140. When Ji Tianqing announced this special mission, the leaders of the 10 forces were already mentally prepared. From their point of view, it was a bit overkill for the 10 forces to form an army to persuade the various region lords to surrender. With Kenshin's nature, he would most likely split into 2 teams and act separately. That would be more efficient. Since they were going to act separately, they would definitely choose 2 experts to be the leaders. From Kenshin's previous reaction, it was obvious that he had a good impression of Dugu Zhan and Wanyan clan leader. He would most likely appoint them as the leaders. And reality proved that everyone's guess was correct. As expected, Ji Tianqing divided the 10 forces into 2 teams and let the Dugu and Wanyan clans lead them. An appointment was an appointment. He only announced the decision. He didn't say at the end, "Does anyone have any opinions?" Nonsense, he didn't need the opinions of the other 8 forces at all. He only needed them to execute the order. When the people of the Dugu and Wanyan clans heard this appointment, they were naturally filled with joy and excitement. They hurriedly bowed and expressed their gratitude to Ji Tianqing. They also vowed that they would definitely complete the mission. The people of the other 8 forces didn't feel good in their hearts. Their expressions were somewhat complicated. They felt that they wouldn't lose to the Dugu and Wanyan clans. But because they hesitated and weren't as decisive as the Dugu and Wanyan clans, they missed this opportunity. As a result, they were somewhat unconvinced of the Dugu and Wanyan clans. But Kenshin was present, so they naturally wouldn't show it. After assigning the mission, Ji Tianqing took out over 10 jade slips and handed them to Dugu Zhan and Wanyan clan leader. Some of these jade slips were used for communication. Among them, there were 2 jade slips that recorded the model of the Oath of Surrender. It was for them to persuade the various region lords to surrender. After they succeeded, they had to watch the region lords recite the Oath of Surrender. Dugu Zhan and Wanyan clan leader happily accepted it. Ji Tianqing then reminded everyone, the treatment of the 10 clans and sects is the same. After our great mission is completed, you will be given a region of land. However, this was only the basic treatment and conditions. In the process of saving the people and fighting against the Azura God Emperor and the Imperial Tutor, I will also give out appropriate rewards and punishments according to everyone's performance. I hope that everyone will work hard and complete the task diligently. Only then will you be able to reap the rewards. If there is anyone who pretends to comply, deliberately causes trouble, disrupts and delays my plan, I won't even bother to threaten you. You're on your own now. The entire boundless heaven continent had witnessed Kenshin's strength, methods, and shrewdness. No one would doubt it. Therefore, when they heard Ji Tianqing's words, everyone's heart trembled, and they nodded solemnly in agreement. Ji Tianqing gave a few more instructions to Dugu Zhan and clan head Wanyan before leaving Heavenly Wormwood Mountain. Next, he rode the god-slaying battleship and led the North Army to conquer other regions. The 10 newly joined forces also quickly returned to their respective territories and began to mobilize people to carry out special missions. According to Ji Tianqing's instructions, they split into 2 groups and headed towards the east and west respectively to persuade the various area lords to surrender. A few days later, another important piece of news began to circulate in the boundless heaven continent. Another 8 ancient clans and 2 top forces had pledged allegiance to the Rebel Alliance and had an audience with Kenshin on Heavenly Wormwood Mountain. They swore an oath of surrender in front of Kenshin, causing a change in heaven and earth, and were witnessed by the heavens. No one knew what exactly Kenshin and the 10 forces discussed. However, this matter was absolutely true, and the results were also very obvious. After the 10 forces left Heavenly Wormwood Mountain, they returned to their respective abodes and began to mobilize the elite experts under their command. It was said that, there were rumors that Kenshin had arranged a special mission for the 10 forces. The powerhouses of the 10 forces would be divided into 2 groups to carry out Kenshin's orders. As for the specific content of the mission, no one knew for the time being. However, what was certain was that Kenshin would definitely use the 10 forces to speed up the progress of conquering the various regions. The facts proved that this was indeed the case. 20 days later, the 10 forces each mobilized 800 elites, assembled them into 2 groups, and set off in the east and west directions. Both groups had 4,000 people, and most of them were Divine Lord powerhouses. Among them, there were only 50 Divine King powerhouses. One group was led by Dugu Zhan and rushed to the east of the boundless heaven continent. The other group was led by clan leader Wanyan and rushed to the west of the boundless heaven continent. In this way, the Rebel Alliance's numbers and forces grew once again, and they had armies in the east, south, west, and north. This made the Rebel Alliance's prestige even greater, and it also made the people of the boundless heaven continent place even greater expectations on them. Countless people raised their heads in anticipation, looking forward to the good news from the Rebel Alliance. After another 2 days, there was finally news from the Rebel Alliance. After hearing this news, the people of the boundless heaven continent finally knew what kind of mission Kenshin had arranged for the 10 forces. The first to transmit the news of victory was the Eastern Army led by Duguzhan. The Eastern Army entered a certain region and barged into the domain chief's manor with great momentum to negotiate with the domain chief. The 5 forces led by Duguzhan took turns to persuade the domain chief, using threats and promises in an unyielding manner. Besieged by 4,000 soldiers of the Eastern Army, the governor and his soldiers had no choice but to submit and swear to surrender in front of everyone. After forcing the domain chief to surrender, Duguzhan conveyed Kenshin's order to the domain chief to abolish slavery as soon as possible and restore the freedom of the people. Due to the oath, the domain chief naturally could not disobey Kenshin's order and could only act according to the order. After the Eastern Army successfully subdued the region, they quickly rushed to the next region. Then, there was good news from the Western Army. The Western Army led by clan leader Wanyan also successfully subdued a certain region. The specific process was basically the same as Duguzhan's experience. It was also the Western Army that advanced triumphantly, domineering, and tough attitude that persuaded the domain chief to surrender. The domain lord only had 2 choices. Either he surrendered, or he resisted. If he resisted, he would be besieged by the 4,000 soldiers of the Western Army. These domain chiefs who stayed in their respective territories and did not follow the order to go to the Azura Divine Palace all had selfish motives and wanted to surrender. Therefore, without exception, the domain chief chose to surrender. After successfully subduing the region, clan leader Wanyan read Kenshin's order and ordered the domain chief to carry it out and restore the freedom of the people. After this matter smoothly ended, clan leader Wanyan led the Western Army and rushed to the next region. After the news spread, the various forces and hundreds of millions of people were discussing it. The new Eastern and Western armies seemed no different from the original Northern and Southern armies. But in reality, the difference between the two was huge. Chapter 41-41. The original North and South armies were the first to submit to the Kenshin. Their attitude was clearer and more trustworthy of the Kenshin's trust. At the same time, the North Army was led by Kenshin while the South Army was led by Nangong Buhua. In the current rebel alliance, Nangong Buhua was the Kenshin's most trusted aide. In other words, the North and South armies were more loyal and controllable. They could be called the rebel alliance's main force. As for the new East and West armies, they were fence-sitters who only submitted to the rebel alliance after a few months of observation. Their loyalty was not high. The forces that formed the two armies could not be trusted. The Dugu and Wanyan clans that led the two armies were not Kenshin's trusted aides. Therefore, the Kenshin's control over these two armies would be much weaker. Due to the fact that the leaders and vice-leaders of the 10 forces had already sworn an oath of surrender. Therefore, they would not dare to go against the Kenshin's will and disobey the Kenshin's orders. However, no one could guarantee that they would not do something that would deceive their superiors and deceive their subordinates at certain crucial moments. Let's take a simple example. If the North and South armies met a territorial leader who did not surrender and even gathered their forces to resist, there would be no hesitation. Then, without a doubt, he would definitely start a war and forcefully defeat the other party, forcing them to surrender. Or they could kill the other party and choose a new territorial leader to control the territory. However, the East and West armies looked aggressive and tough, using the rebel alliance and Kenshin's signboard. If they met a territorial leader who was stubborn and did not fear death and refused to surrender, the East and West armies would definitely not be able to do so. They would just start a war. Most of the forces would try to preserve their own strength and stall for time while waiting for the Kenshin to come and settle it. Therefore, the East and West armies were still under Ji Tianqing's observation and test. He did not expect the two armies to fight a bloody battle. It would be enough if they could serve as a messenger and persuade the other party to surrender. As time passed, the four armies of the rebel alliance conquered one territory after another. The territories that surrendered to the rebel alliance also spread out in all directions with Yenshu's heavenly cave as the center. After a short 3 months, nearly half of the boundless heaven continent actually belonged to the rebel alliance. In the meantime, quite a few top forces and ancient clans requested to join the anti-rebellion's alliance sincerely and humbly. Even though everyone knew that these factions and ancient clans were all shameless people, they still didn't dare to offend them. After being a fence-sitter for so long, it was only now that he joined the rebel alliance. It was truly despicable. However, Ji Tianqing still followed the old rules and allowed them to join the rebel alliance. He also personally watched them read the oath of surrender. As for these forces, Ji Tianqing treated them even worse. Other than guaranteeing that they could preserve their current forces and industries after unifying the boundless heaven continent, they did not give any conditions or treatment. There was no reward of a region or permission to develop forces and businesses in the surrounding 9 regions. Even so, those forces had no complaints and surrendered obediently. Of course, the boundless heaven continent was now clearly divided and the situation was very clear. This should be the last batch of fence-sitters who joined the rebel alliance. The forces that were still in a wait-and-see state would probably continue to observe. As for the imperial tutor, he did not make any big moves in these 3 months. He only mobilized and gathered the forces under his command and deployed more troops in the Dark Night region to make the entire region impregnable. At present, it seemed that the imperial tutor was determined not to fight back. He only wanted to defend the Dark Night region and wait for the final battle. However, this was not the case. When the 10 forces joined the rebel alliance and formed 2 armies, the imperial tutor noticed it. The army in the north was commanded by Kenshin. They could not afford to offend them. The army in the south was commanded by Nangong Buhua. It was composed of 6 forces and was very powerful. In addition, with the lesson of the God Slayer's destruction, the imperial tutor did not dare to attack the army in the south. If he wanted to weaken the rebel alliance, he could only deal with the 2 armies in the east and west. However, the repeated defeats and heavy losses left a deep impression on the imperial tutor. This time, he did not act rashly. After all, the 4 armies of the rebel alliance were still expanding outwards. The distance between them was increasing. The imperial tutor was very wary of Kenshin's incredible speed. Therefore, he patiently prepared and waited for 3 months. When the 4 armies were far enough apart, the imperial tutor finally made his move. This operation was the same as the God Slayers. He carefully selected 8,000 soldiers, led by 2 9th-level Divine King experts, and quietly rushed to the west of the boundless heaven continent to deal with the army in the west led by clan leader Wan Yen. In order not to repeat the mistakes of the God Slayer, the imperial tutor mobilized a total of 7,950 divine lords and 50 divine kings. Even the name of this army was called the Western Expedition Army. It was not as ostentatious as the God Slayers. The imperial tutor studied the information of the army in the west and felt that the 4,000 soldiers were weak and lacked coordination. However, he still sent out double the number of soldiers and taught them a few strategies. If the rebel alliance's army in the west was a wolf, then the imperial tutor's Western Expedition Army was a giant beast. He believed that as long as there were no accidents, the Western Expedition Army would be able to easily crush the army in the west. On a dark and windy night, the Western Expedition Army quietly set off without attracting anyone's attention. Other than the Western Expedition Army, the imperial tutor, and a few of his trusted subordinates, almost no one knew the whereabouts and route of this army. The Rebel Alliance's army in the west did not notice the approaching danger and continued to march forward, conquering one region after another. 3 months ago, when the Western Road Army was carrying out their mission, many of them appeared to be tough on the outside but weak on the inside. Many of them were filled with worry. They were worried that the territorial masters would not know what was good for them. If a conflict really broke out, would they fight or not? That was why they brought up the name of the Rebel Subjugation Alliance and the Sword God, appearing aggressive and unyielding. However, in these 3 months, their journey had been smooth sailing, and they had been successful in every endeavor. None of the domain lords dared to challenge or go against them. As a result, the Western Expedition Army's morale was inflated. The experts of the 5 forces were a little complacent. They even felt that the Kenshin would take over the world and rule the entire boundless heaven continent. It was already set in stone and would be realized in a year at most. At that time, they would be heroes who had made great contributions. Many people were fantasizing about how the Kenshin would reward them when the time came. How much benefits, power, and status would they receive? Very quickly, 10 days passed. The crisis had finally arrived, but the Western Expedition Army was still unaware. Chapter 41-42. It was still late at night. The god-slaying battleship was speeding high in the sky. The White Dragon was steering the battleship. Ji Tianqing was cultivating in seclusion in the distorted spacetime. The people of the Phoenix clan, Wuxia clan, and 100 Refinement Ancient sect were circulating and adjusting their breathing in the battleship. A day ago, the Northern Army had just subdued an area lord and was currently rushing to the next area. Seeing the Rebel Alliance advancing triumphantly without any setbacks and occupying half of the boundless heaven continent in such a short period of time, everyone was very satisfied and proud. However, Ji Tianqing, who was cultivating in seclusion in the God Pagoda, suddenly ended his cultivation and opened his eyes. In the past 3 months, he had spent most of his time cultivating in seclusion in the distorted spacetime. 3 months had passed in the outside world, but in reality, he had been cultivating in seclusion for 11 years. His strength was still increasing and had already reached more than 10 times that of a peak divine king. Originally, he was at a critical juncture of his cultivation. In a few more months, he would be able to double his strength again. However, in the past 2 days, distracting thoughts vaguely appeared in his mind again and started to affect his thinking, causing him to be unable to concentrate on his cultivation. Until tonight, the distracting thoughts in his mind became more and more intense and became a kind of warning sign. It was very obvious that Ji Tianqing was disturbed by the heavens again and had a bad premonition. In other words, it was very likely that this was a warning from the heavens. With the experience of the God Slayer ambushing the Southern Army, Ji Tianqing immediately realized that something big was about to happen again. However, the heavens were unpredictable. Even if he had a sudden premonition of danger, he could not determine where the danger came from. My friends and family are all by my side, cultivating in the battleship and the God Pagoda. With my current strength, there is no opponent in the divine world, so naturally, there will be no danger. That premonition of danger is most likely related to the Rebel Alliance. Ji Tianqing calmed down and sat under the blood flame sacred tree. He began to analyze and speculate seriously. Could it be that the imperial tutor has been in seclusion for 3 months and secretly mobilized an army to ambush the Rebel Alliance? That's highly possible. In just a short moment, he had determined the basic direction. The crisis should have come from the imperial tutor and descended upon the Rebel Alliance. If the imperial tutor doesn't want to fight with me, he won't dare to provoke me. The Southern Army. Previously, he had sent God Slayer to ambush them. In the end, the God Slayer was destroyed. He probably wouldn't attack the Southern Army again. On the other hand, the Eastern and Western armies that had just joined the alliance did not have my trusted subordinates to lead them, nor did they have sufficient loyalty in teamwork. As a result, their combat strength was not strong. If I were the imperial tutor, the safest course of action would be to attack both the Eastern and Western armies. Furthermore, after learning the lesson of the God Slayer's crushing defeat last time, the imperial tutor would definitely attach great importance to this and strive for success. Both the Eastern and Western armies had 4,000 soldiers each. The imperial tutor would have to send at least 6,000 soldiers to defeat them. But, will the imperial tutor deal with the eastern or western armies? Through a series of analysis and inferences, Ji Tianqing locked onto the eastern and western armies. However, at this juncture, he was unable to analyze which army the imperial tutor would deal with. After all, the heavens had only given him a warning, giving him a premonition of crisis. It was already not easy for him to analyze so many clues and train of thought through an illusory premonition and finally lock onto the eastern and western armies. If he wanted to distinguish which army the imperial tutor would deal with, that was not a warning from the heavens, but a direct answer. How was this possible? Therefore, after analyzing and guessing for a while, Ji Tianqing really could not deduce a specific result. Thus, he took out 2 communication jade slips and sent them to Dugu Zhan and clan leader Wanyan respectively. The contents of the jade slips were very simple. There were only a few sentences. However, Ji Tianqing's tone was dignified and his wording was cautious, indicating that this crisis was no small matter. Dugu Zhan and clan leader Wanyan were leading their armies and galloping on the eastern and western sides of the boundless heaven continent. They were both immersed in their previous success and glory, and their mentality was somewhat complacent. There was a kind of mysterious self-confidence that said, if the imperial tutor does not appear, who can compete with him? Moreover, in these 3 months, they had rarely received personal messages from Kenshin. Tonight, when they suddenly received a message from Ji Tianqing, both of them were filled with joy and anticipation. They thought that Kenshin had some instructions or wanted to reward them. Unexpectedly, Kenshin actually warned them in a solemn tone to be careful in the next few days, fearing that something big would happen and a crisis was imminent. When they saw such a message, Dugu Zhan and clan leader Wanyan's reactions were basically the same. Both of them respected Kenshin very much and maintained their respect and trust for him. Of course, they believed that if Kenshin said that a crisis was imminent, something big would definitely happen. In the next few days, they would also follow Kenshin's orders and be more careful and prudent in their actions. However, the problem was that Kenshin's words were vague and unclear. He did not say what kind of danger it was or when it would happen. This made Dugu Zhan and the Wanyan clan head confused. They were at a loss of what to do. Therefore, after the 2 of them repeatedly pondered over Ji Tianqing's message, they also invited a few clan leaders and sect leaders to discuss how to reply to Kenshin. Although those clan leaders and sect leaders were on high alert, they did not take it too seriously. When everyone was discussing, they also had a calm and relaxed attitude. Our rebel alliance's general momentum has been established and we already control half of the boundless heaven continent. Even the imperial tutor does not dare to come out and face us. What does this mean? The alliance's forces are strong enough that even the imperial tutor does not dare to face us easily. Not that we want to brag, but in the current boundless heaven continent, unless the imperial tutor personally takes action, who would dare to go against our eastern, western, army? These were the original words of a certain clan leader, but they were also the thoughts of everyone. To put it simply, the 10 forces of the eastern and western armies had all expanded. They all felt that apart from the imperial tutor, no one could threaten them. Even though Kenshin had warned them to be careful, he did not clearly explain what was going on, so no one took it to heart. The discussion ended without a conclusion just like that. Dugu Zhan and clan leader Wanyan considered their words and replied to Ji Tianqing. First, they expressed that they would follow orders and would be more careful and prudent. Second, they asked Kenshin to clearly state what kind of danger it was. If they could know the specific situation, it would be convenient for the army to deploy plans in advance and respond accordingly. Only then would they be able to turn danger into safety. After Ji Tianqing received the 2's messages, he felt deeply helpless. I can't predict the future, so how would I know the specific situation of the danger? If I knew, why wouldn't I tell you? Ji Tianqing muttered a few words to himself before replying to Dugu Zhan and clan leader Wanyan. He reminded the two that the imperial tutor was likely to send an army of more than 6,000 people to secretly ambush the eastern and western armies. However, the specific location of the ambush and what kind of scheme they would use were still unclear. In short, the eastern and western armies had to be careful. If they were really ambushed, they should prioritize preserving their strength. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.